Hello and welcome to another episode of the Captain's Table. My name is Paul Berserker01 Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender here at the AstroPub, your space bar at the end of the universe. And this is the Captain's Table. What is the Captain's Table, you might ask? Well, this is a podcast that I've been going for 8 years, talking about Star Citizen and talking about the news, the lore, the theory crafting, just bringing people from all over the Star Citizen universe to talk about Star Citizen. And it is the week before CitizenCon as we're recording this. So we're going to be talking about CitizenCon, specifically the schedule, which was released, I think, yesterday or the day before. It was yesterday, right?
Day before that, I think.
The day before that was Wednesday, last Wednesday. Anyways, it's been released recently, and so we're going to go over it in detail today. We're talking about our own kind of opinions and stuff like that. But before we do, I'm going to start with introductions, starting with Major Star Stuff, who has emerged like Ponsatunky Phil once a year to talk about Star Citizen, and will return to his hut. He will tell us if 4.0 is imminent. If he sees a shadow, 4.0 is imminent. So, Major, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you. Tanya Inafo Kafinai, Eto Takai Omeja. Hello, I'm Major Star Stuff. You may remember me from that one Banu language video I ever put on YouTube and then disappeared forever. I basically work in T and public relations, and I, as all of us, am passionate about Star Citizen, and that thankfully occasionally brings me here.
I love to have you. Yeah. I love to have you here, as always. I'm always interested in bringing people who are passionate about the story of Star Citizen to talk about Star Citizen from that perspective. And Tree 0311, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you, other than with the crayon bar?
I'm Tree 0311. If most of chat should know me since I've been on here numerous times. But the 0311 is, I'm former Marine, current Army flight paramedic. So my primary contribution to the Star Citizen community is I do the Pathfinders podcast with my partner in crime, Nazarus. And so we follow the development in great detail of Star Citizen Squadron 42 and everything, all things CIG. So that's a lot of fun. I've been doing not a lot more, but I've been doing more gameplay streams recently. Been having a lot of fun with a Zero to Hero playthrough, which has been really interesting. A little bit of light RP. Tonight, gonna be doing some dropship trooper operations with hopefully some members of lore. So if you're interested in getting together and riding in the Vomit Comet, please come hang out, and we'll go have some fun and some shenanigans.
Awesome.
And lastly, I all my content is charity driven. I keep no monetization for myself. So all Twitch and YouTube payouts, sub money, ad money, all that goes to my donor drive for stackup.org, which is an organization that is connects veterans and members of the military with video games and video game communities to combat PTSD, veteran suicide, and the stressors of being deployed and stationed far from family and friends. So something I'm pretty passionate about because I'm from the military. I am in the military. But yeah, so super excited to be here. It's I just posted on Twitter. it's the most wonderful time of the year.
It is Star Citizen Christmas. That is for sure.
It is.
By the way, is that on that mug? Is that Commander Susan Ivanova on your cup?
That is indeed Ivanova. This is I actually ordered a second one of these in case I ever break these. This is the Ivanova is always right quote.
Oh yeah, Ivanova's always right. Ivanova's God. Yeah.
Exactly. I will listen to Ivanova. I will not ignore Ivanova's recommendations. Yeah. It's a useful cup, especially when you work in the agency.
Yeah.
And stuff, right? To put on the table.
I love that. For those of you who haven't watched Babylon 5, go watch Babylon 5. It is one of the best science fiction shows that have ever been made. It is criminally underrated because it was revolutionary for its time. They were using 3D effects before anybody else was using 3D effects. They were like pioneers in using 3D effects for television. And the early seasons are jank in terms of their look. They are very jank. But they used over the counter consumer grade 3D like designs. But as the seasons went on, as consumer that sort of thing improved, they got better at it. And so like by the last season, it was really, really good. It was probably on par with anything you'd see in like Star Trek and that kind of stuff. Which one we're talking about? Babylon 5. But apparently the creator, since this is kind of related to space and science fiction, Star Citizen stuff, had at one point convinced Warner Brothers to greenlight a reboot of the series. So John Michael Straczynski was set to relaunch Babylon 5 for a new generation. So
don't threaten me with a good time.
He's looking for support because he is dealing with David Zaslav's Warner Brothers. So that could mean, and it's a good idea. So it's probably going to get canned, but
Have you watched the animated?
I have. It's good.
Movie though, the Road Home last year, right?
Yeah. It's came out. You can buy it on Blu-ray. It's a good one to get. So
highly recommended. Yeah.
So yeah, check it out if you can too, and you can actually watch all of it on I think Amazon. I think the entire series is on Amazon Prime. So you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free. Anyways, with that, let's get on to the actual discussion for today, CitizenCon. We're going to go through each panel individually, and then we're going to talk about what our favorites are, and then what we think are going to be the best panels, because maybe what we like won't necessarily be the most popular, and then what are going to be the most controversial or least liked panels as well. So I'll start with you, Tree, on this one. Your opinion on Brave New Worlds, and I'll read the whole thing. The panel's name is Brave New World. It starts at 11 a.m. British summertime. And it says, introducing Genesis, the innovative suite of technologies and processes within Star Engine that breathe new life into truly immersive worlds, achieving the fidelity and scale required to fill an entire universe. That is 100% a Star Trek reference, but...
Oh, yeah. Yep. Gotta give credit where credit's due, because that, definitely a Star Trek reference, and it's very apt. Given what they're describing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't put my show notes up on the screen, but like I went through, and for each panel, I wrote down the description, and then I wrote down the like key descriptor words, because that's where I can even just imagine what these meetings are like when they're coming up with this, like, and they're all brainstorming, how do we, what verbiage do we use to make the community just absolutely foam at the mouth trying to figure out exactly what we're talking about. And then afterwards, and they show us like, oh, it makes so much sense now. And so the keywords I got was suite of technologies and processes within Star Engine, breathe life into, and then fidelity and scale. And so like for suite of technologies and processes within Star Engine, I think that the big thing is, and if you listen to Paul or Naz and I, read through the monthly reports, you've probably heard them talk many times about doing things within the engine, bringing it within the engine, so that way they can, the developers can do all this work within the engine, not have to port it into from other programs. And so it's things like the procedural locations tool, Rastar, which both went 1.0 and as far as tools go, in 2022, I think it was. And so I think we're going to see what those are capable of in terms of what they do within the editor, especially in a sense of, okay, we have this, and it's algorithmic, and it goes, and then the designers come back in and church it up, and then and that's a lot of that is for the planets, Planet Tech V5, but also all the POI. And then breathe life into, when I read that, all I could think about is all the work that they've been talking about with the fauna.
Oh God, yeah.
Recently, and all the animations.
They have not shut up about it in the monthly reports, and even in their social medias, they've been talking about it like nonstop. Mm-hmm. So,
but they've also been talking about the NPC behaviors and how all those work, especially in like locations. And so it's a matter, like, to me, it's talking about how do they get, like with the Apollo subsumption editor, how do they get the NPCs both character and I guess you'd say like the fauna to exist in the universe, and spawn in and out and be performant and be believable, but also varied, in a way that doesn't require a whole bunch of like hands-on. And then another thing that I noticed that was pretty interesting earlier in the year was they talked about being able to do much greater like object, I guess you call it density. And so this is the Star Engine demo from last year, 2.0. And so like I'm hoping that they'll be able to demonstrate like a jungle. Like they mentioned that specifically in the monthly report, and that level of density, because it's not only like what can the engine create, but also what is going to work within a client side performance.
Because we know the
rendering it.
CryEngine, which is what the Star Engine's based off of, can render a jungle, because that's literally the first Crisis game was in a jungle.
Yeah.
So, and if anybody who's played Crisis recently will show you that like it is really good, especially for its time. It was very good, but that was also a single player campaign, on PC rather than a multiplayer or MMO scale. So it'll be interesting to see them try to do that.
Stream in and out and persist and be destructible, and all this stuff that CIG is trying to just reach, shoot for the moon for. And then lastly, fidelity and scale. Like for me, it was just like, how does all this get tied together? Because they talked about last year with the Planetech V5 in terms of like using AI to generate it for them with, they have to get to the point where they're doing all this with inputs, and just basically telling their system, their suite of systems, okay, this is what we're going for, and it'll sort of lay the foundation for all of it, and then they can come in and tweak in each one of these different things. How many POI do we want? What type of POI? What sort of flora and fauna are appropriate? Is there a herd or that sort of thing? Like it's that's the big part of where do they go from here in order to be able to get that sense of scale and build out a much bigger universe like they've been talking about, to really shut up all the people who are, it's never going to be 100 systems. And it's like, okay, well, CIG is going to keep pushing, until they can't.
Yeah, that's always important to note when it comes to that, because it's definitely a concern about 100 systems. But as you and I always talk about, which is, when you look at the lore behind the systems, and when me or Tree say lore is gameplay, what we're saying is not that the lore creates the gameplay, but that lore was written for the gameplay. So CIG came up with the lore came up with the gameplay, then came up with lore to justify the gameplay. So every system description and everything else, like you said, is done around the idea that they want to make it for a gameplay cycle. Like Pyro is this sort of wild Mad Max sort of universe that has flare stars, and of course it has a big faction. So it's like faction gameplay is a huge thing that'll play into it. That was always sort of the angle that they wanted to go with that. And Nyx is built in not built, but it's on the edge of a dark nebula, so it's going to be very hard to see with sensors. So it's going to be all about scanning gameplay, less overt violence, more covert things like smuggling and sort of backstabbing and such. So each system has its own niche, and there's plenty of systems whose niches it's empty. Go play. It's a playground for the sandbox for players to build
Frontier
bases and stuff like that.
Which they say later on,
Yeah.
like that's. We've got base building and frontiers in this CitizenCon. That's going to be a thing.
And most systems,
I just thought it was.
I was going to say, and most systems are empty. Like not every system is got a big crux theme to it. It's like something like 30 to 40% of the systems are just maybe one landing zone, but mostly empty. So,
and that's self-promotion. Like that's one of the podcast type segments that I do. I do lore equals gameplay at least once a month when they do the Galactopedia updates. Because if you go through and you read about the updates and you read about the systems, CIG is very on the nose about the sort of theme for each system. When they do the Galactopedia updates, they're not subtle about what sort of things you're going to be doing there. When they're describing the locations, and the factions that are within these systems, and they're just barely scratching the surface with the Galactopedia updates. There's going to be a lot more, but they're laying some of the groundwork there, and it's more overt from one system to another. But if you go look at Nyx, like you just talked about, they're not. It's not as nebulous as you might think.
Yeah. Major, your thoughts on Brave New Worlds, that panel. What do you think is going to come out from that?
Yeah. First disclaimer: Tree is the one who has the list and all the answers and
And
the
the
insights.
notes.
I'll be the one listening and learning tonight, and occasionally throwing in my monologues.
Tree is the nerd with the glasses, and Star Stuff is vibing. He's all vibes tonight. So
I have 4 pages of notes, and that's what I got done at work yesterday.
I'm too embarrassed. I'm not going to reveal how many pages I have. Let's leave it at that. So my question would be, or I'm wondering, so Star Engine, is it? No, let me start another way. So my concern is as the game scales up in terms of size, both more systems, more flora, fauna on some of those planets, there will still be a lot of, or question for those who know, it's basically a question. Won't it be still a lot of work to create those systems for whom law already exists? And my worry is, how long will it take to translate the law that exists into the game? And how can Star Engine, how is that the tool that gets us there? Or is Star Engine is it a tool that may help them create a universe, but will that universe at some point feel more like something from No Man's Sky? Question mark, like
empty
and
plainless,
that's
or
my,
actually with feeling, with
like empty is one thing, but for example, I'm expecting for the Brave New Worlds, I'm expecting more space cow and information, space horses. But
Unicorns.
I mean, they put a lot
That's
of
what we need.
work and effort, obviously, into creating the fauna for Microtech, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right now, so that if we stick to the simulation and a bit of realism there, in my opinion, is then, well, that's the fauna you created for Microtech, and unless there's some, what's it called, something
animal.
spermia, right?
Yeah.
If they somehow get moved to other planets via cargo haulers or something, I'd assume that the planets that have life, it should be entirely different from what they create for each planet, right?
Yeah.
And how does Star Engine? So this is really more of a question. How does Star Engine play into that? And I expect to see more of that, like them showcasing, teasing us with how they're going to go about that, and maybe also, because we're talking a lot about flora and fauna now, but also in terms of filling the universe, and how Star Engine plays into filling the universe with scaling up the amounts of systems at some point, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think you're hitting on a good point. Like, I don't think CIG is just using Genesis as a cheeky Star Trek references. I think it's also it's probably also tying into the tools they use for animals. And I wouldn't be surprised if they used some sort of No Man's Sky-esque proc gen system to create different variations on the same animal, rather than doing it by hand, because that by hand can take time, and you have to like rig everything individually. And I think the key is to make it so that it's unique. It can't just be here's the Derposaur, right? Boom, throws down there. It has to be make sense.
Here's what No Man's Sky did.
Yeah.
And here's how we dial it up to 11.
Exactly.
In terms of fidelity, but also giving the amount of scale, so it isn't like 100% procedural, but it allows them to do kind of like with planets, like 80% of the work is done in a matter of minutes, and then with the Planet Tech V4 and such. I'm gonna put a link in chat if you don't mind.
Go for it.
But that's a podcast that Naz and I did like 2 years ago, talking about the suite of tools that they were building and proving out at that point, which are all things that they have been working on integrating into the engine. And that's really just for locations. It talks about like the gas clouds, the asteroids, procedural locations tool, Rastar, all that sort of stuff. So with lots of citations, and that's a couple of years ago, and that was just them, barely. This is how we're proving out these tools, but then okay, how does CIG take those, which it improves their workflow, but makes it so that way they can amplify that, at a much higher rate and include a whole lot of algorithmic logic. Because that's one thing that Tony Z talked about in the original quantum presentation, in terms of scaling up the universe. Back in at CitizenCon 2951, that there's going to be a lot of algorithmic logic that basically, they need to have that in order to tell the tools to do 80% of the work, so that way CIG can come back in and do the rest. And it's still going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be a lot less, than if they were using the tools by hand 100%.
Yeah. I think,
So
go ahead, Major.
I was just going to ask you, ThinkTree, they'll basically tease us with this is how it works, how it's going to work, or are we expecting also a bit of a plan? Like, are they going to show us, okay, this is where we are right now, this is 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, because I guess the general assumption is that the way you described it is how they're going to approach it, but is so much speculation at this point still, right? This ever-present question, well, 100 systems when? Is it is it going to be like 1.0 and then we have a live service game and then each year 10 new systems? Or I'd be curious to hear some answers about that, maybe in that panel.
I think that's why the panels are organized the way they are, kind of like last year, how there was a lot of interconnectedness, which I think is great, because they can take things that they show off in one panel and use them again in another panel to show this is how this all comes together, in both in a purposeful but also not purposeful way. And I think that we're kind of like how the Star Engine demo of last year, a lot of that was shown again in other parts of of CitizenCon. I think we're going to see a lot of the things for the Star Engine demo make additional appearances throughout CitizenCon. And I think that in terms of base building and locations, the part for Beyond Pyro, we're going to see a lot of this sort of stuff as well. But you bring up a good point. Like, it's part of they're going to have to do more than just say this is the plan. We've spent all this time building these tools. They have to be able to demonstrate some progress and be able to show that this is what it can do. Kind of like Paul, you remember when they had that video, and it's up on the Turbulent website, or I don't know if they still have their own website, but it showed the power of the procedural locations tool.
Yeah.
Coupled with Houdini, they need to be able to show, that it's not just talk, that this is what they can get the tools to do. They need to be able to show that, and it won't be the 1.0 version. They're not done with it, but this is what we're, that it's able to do right now, and we have to continue to add, more features and fine tune it. But this is where we want it to go, kind of like they did last year, where this is what our things can do, and not all that stuff is in game yet. A lot of it is, but a lot, it also needs a lot of fine tuning. But they're going to show what the engine can do in their internal builds, in order to demonstrate, okay, this is what we're capable of right now. It's rough. We can spit shine it to make it look good for you guys, but in the next year or two, this is where we're going to get to, and hello 1.0.
Yeah,
which is kind of the always the thing, right? The technology, and we all remember last year it was, I think we were, just speaking for myself here, I think we were all super hyped, and then implementation is a different thing, and not necessarily everything they promised last year, but within the time frame it was then implemented the way they had promised. So I guess that skepticism is always a little bit there. So I'm personally curious to see what they tell us this year, and then also specifically then the year after, the years after, what of those things they tell us will be implemented. And the two of you and most of the other people watching probably that go way more back with the game than I do with my 2.5 years of experience. You out of all people probably know about broken promises, right? Or I watched
That's
this Soul
failed
Citizens the other
expectations.
week.
Yeah.
I watched the Soul Citizens the other week, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that existed, and that was an idea back then. So
Oh yeah. No.
The language has changed a lot,
Yeah.
and they've gotten better. But even though the language has changed, a vocal portion of the community will still insert their own verbiage based off what they heard through their own bias and what they said they promised, and it's like, no, they literally didn't, because he knows that we give him shit about it every time he does, and but it's one of those things where you have to realize CIG is people, CR is a person, and they're going to be hyped about this stuff just like we are, because they're passionate about the project and they're goal oriented and driven, and so you can't get just big upset and hold their feet to the fire, when, oh wow, they didn't achieve their own intentions and goals, or 100%, or they got this much versus that much. Like, would have you ever managed someone? Have you ever had to give constructive feedback to somebody who works for you? Can you imagine what it would be, how your coworkers would feel, or if you're a manager or supervisor and you treated them the way the backer community often treats CIG? Like that's how I always relate back to this. It's like, oh wow, you have never been in a leadership position, have you? You have never supervised anyone and had to give constructive feedback, or someone has. You have never gotten good constructive feedback and known how that feels compared to when you've gotten shitty constructive feedback.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, I'm, a lot more objective with CIG and everything compared to some people.
I am how to put this. I'm on board with that. The thing is that I think CIG's gotten better at it, and I think there is a way that CIG can talk about how excited they are about something and learn to shut up about specifics. like last year when Jared went up and said, like, oh yeah, we're shooting for 4.0 in summer, I threw things. I'm like, why did you say that? Why did you say that? Now that is the promise. Not because people don't hear that. They hear we're shooting for summer and they say that's the summer, and they'll be like, it's targeting. June, it's summer. And it's like, what they should have said is we're still targeting it for next year. And then as they get closer, when they start having more specific hardcore understandings of like, oh, it's going to be in the next 6 months, 2 months. If this is the next 6 months and it comes in 7 months, will there be people who are mad? Yeah, but there'll be less of a butthurt about it, because it'd be like, oh yeah, but we're testing it, like we're getting close to it, sort of thing. And that's where CIG kind of breaks down. And I get what Major's trying to say is like, CIG needs to not just show, they need to like put up with this thing. And I think that's what this panel has an opportunity to do, which is not just to say, here's how we're going to get 100 systems filled with life and NPCs, but to show you how they can do it and explain how it's going to be implemented. Because that's the key. It's nice to see, like, no one will care if it's just Planet Tech 5.0. But like, neat, cool, move on. But if it's like, this is it, this is our plan on how we're going to achieve our goals. Like, this is our solid, concrete idea. This is the system we're going to use to do this, and this. Yeah. Of course, that can change because it's development and things may not work out all the way. But we're getting to the point where a lot of these systems are the final system. Like, Rastar didn't get completely replaced, even though there was lots of reports and leaks of it sucking and being awful and nobody liking it. Still there.
The opposite of it being replaced. They use it for all sorts of things now. It's just
a matter of dialing it in. And I think that's what we'll see with, say, Genesis, is them dialing it in. But I do think it's going to be Planetech V5 with their machine learning algorithm that they're being building. Probably how they're building creatures, and possibly even new tools that you're going to use to like speed up the process of building creatures. Maybe some sort of like copying skeletons over and using some sort of way of procedurally generating it and at a basic state and moving on beyond that. I can't see them doing something other than that in terms of being able to achieve the scale they want to in the time frame they want to, because it just takes so long to hand tweak a creature like that. So,
when So like Genesis is a Star Trek reference because it's a biblical reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and you know, I'm not a religious person. I grew up in the church, so I know that God created the world in 7 days. You know, in the book of Genesis,
Yeah.
like, you know,
It's-
this is Star Engine is their God tool.
Yeah.
How do they create worlds? You know, and maybe it won't be 7 days, but you know, how do they create an entire world? You know, in a reasonable period of time that is alive and breathing, and you know.
Yeah. It's weird because for those of you who don't know, I'll say this right now. As of the recording, CIG has announced that they're releasing 4.0 into Evocati today, sometime. So maybe even dropping while we're recording this, while this is live on Twitch and YouTube. And so the chat in YouTube chat is just nothing but talking about 4.0 and if it's coming out this year or not, which we'll probably bring up for the question.
How is it that YouTube is always so wildly different than Twitch chat? Because I'm watching certain people on YouTube, and it's like you guys are not paying attention at all.
Yeah, they're off on talking about 4.0 and when 4.0 is coming out, and everybody else is like, oh yeah, let's talk about creatures and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, YouTube chat. I've got like a long list of citations that show that what you're talking about in previous history is not appropriate context anymore, and things have changed.
Yeah,
you know, that's how we're in 4.0 and Evo right now.
So. We'll talk about that. Save that for the question and answer session. But let's move on to the social universe. All right, so this is the next panel. A social universe is the people whom you meet and the bonds you form are truly bring the verse to life. Dive into how we're evolving the social features to maximize your adventures, from personal one-on-one interactions to massive gatherings with hundreds and even thousands of players. What do you think, Major? What do you think this is going to be about?
So the way I read this, the social universe is kind of Brave New Worlds. This is flora, fauna, and maybe how we're going to add planets. Although arguably that's going to be more part in the pyro section, right? And then the social universe is basically this is how human beings interact in the world, how we add NPCs that do more than stand around and do the things that we know they've been able to do so far. Plus, then how all this interacts. So, org tools? Question marks?
Mm-hmm.
Question mark. But
you said the word. You said the word.
Yep.
I said the word.
Yeah.
I said the word. But also what. Oh, sorry, just said that sentence because I feel like you're going to have a lot of contributions.
All I was saying was saying you said the word because that's like something that people have been banging on about for a decade.
God, yeah.
I'll say it again. Org tools, because I mean, what is it that we have right now? We have this hilarious non-implementation of orgs. You can be part of an org. You can be part of 20 orgs on the website, and it does not matter at all because it's in no way, shape, or form connected to what's in game. So, I mean, as much as I enjoy, like Paul, you doing your the artifact hunting org stuff, but it's all make believe, and none of that has been implemented in the game. And I would love to see at least for it's the way we create parties in game, let there be some tier 0 version of org markers, something yada yada yada. And so that's one thing I'm hoping to hear a little bit about. And then personally, I mean it talks about one-on-one interactions, massive gatherings. I'm wondering whether this will be only about player-to-player interaction, or also how there will be more social dynamics in terms of how we can interact with NPCs beyond what's been implemented so far.
We're on the same wavelength.
Beyond just mission giving, beyond just mission giving, like characters standing around, and what happens if I approach them? Do they talk to me?
Mm-hmm. Can I help you if you stare at them for too long?
And it can I help you? Is that all they're ever going to say? And is that the only phrase they'll be able to say? I think that sort of stuff is also going to be important at some point if they really want to make the universe feel alive and not like a game, but more like a real world.
Tree?
agree.
need more sarcastic NPCs, CIG. This is a dystopian world. Everybody's jaded.
I love everyone talks about the Clerks NPC, the guy who's
Yeah.
Dante, who is just Dante from Clerks. But because he's the most interesting character in the entire game, because he's the only one. He's like, I wasn't even supposed to be in today. Like, just go. Like, it's great. It's the only characterization we have for any character, and it's like, just do that. More of that, please.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Tree. What do you think? Social universe.
Yeah, no, I think Major Star Stuff nailed it. The definitely in terms of like this is to me going to be org tools. I think CIG is finally getting around to it. And if you remember from the Road to Release presentation in 2018, org tools was one of the last things in that. There was persistence and server meshing, and org tools were some of the last things. And here we are on the road to 1.0, and their minimum viable product release. And I think this is 100 about not just org tools, but just org party, just interacting with other players, even on a just not informal basis. But I think you're really spot on, Major Star Stuff, when you talked about interacting with NPCs, because that's such a common thing in games. Not just the mission givers where they have their specific lines, and shop owners, but just being able to walk up and the NPCs are having their own conversations, because they've talked about this before, where they wanted them to be able to have dynamic conversations about events going on in the world, and for you to be able to just walk up and this NPC has a little bit of essentially has a game generated character screen for them, with a little bit of information, so that way you could have a little bit of a conversation, or at least they're interacting in a believable way, or semi-believable. But then the other thing that I thought was they talked about the features to maximize all that, as well as one-on-one interactions to massive gatherings. And with the gatherings of hundreds and even thousands of players, I was also wondering about maybe they're going to include some sort of form of instanced spaces for different functions and social gatherings for orgs and all that, because there's you can get together in the persistent universe right now. You can go to Wally's bar and chit chat and stuff, but like we don't have people have been talking about shared org spaces, being able to have an org hangar, org storage, and with the instancing technology, they can pretty easily make that stuff work, where you can only go in here if you're in the party. If you're in the org, you can maybe you can access it at any time. It can be instanced, and when more and more people show up, they add another server and another server or something, and so you can have these big meetings, whether it's a social event, whether you're planning a big operation and getting gear together, but with that and like the org permissions, I think that's really where they're going to be going with this, and it's sorely needed. You said that Star Stuff, it is long overdue, and we've been hand jamming, faking this with Discord and everything else for ages. So it's something that I think is probably overdue, and I'm glad it seems like they're finally getting around to it. But it's one of those things where I'm like, God, CIG, I wish you'd prioritize this a bit more, because it has really, I think, shut down a lot of that kind of gameplay that people are really looking for, or functionality in Star Citizen.
Especially in a game, or the point in the game where most of the gameplay is, or most of the long-term gameplay right now is largely player-driven and player-to-player interaction-driven, right? And you rely on exceptions.
Not having org tools for
yeah.
purely sandbox or largely sandbox like we had right now, it's really limiting for sure.
And ideally, you want to. I mean, look at other games, like even Apex Legends, Overwatch. I'm not sure why those come to mind right now, but those are examples from my gaming past that where communication was moved into the game and integrated into the game. The target markers, the goal markers in those games, you can point and point the way for your teammates. And in Star Citizen, we rely on Discord like entirely for any org shenanigans, right? And I don't think that's ideal. You want consumers, customers to interact with your product, and you want them to communicate within the world of your game, and not rely on external tools if it can be avoided.
Yeah. No, I agree.
The other thing I was thinking is, I was thinking maybe this might start to include like player-to-player trading.
Could be. Like
not just the jank trading of drop it on the ground and you give me UEC or something.
Yeah, because that's the thing right now. It's like if you give somebody else something, it needs to be legally transferred to you through the game files. Otherwise, it'll be marked as stolen or not yours. So, I a lot of people in chat are saying, it's Spectrum's integration into the game. Obviously, that's probably a big thing about it. I'm hoping it's org tools. CIG's talked about org tools in the past. I think just them discussing what the org tool plan is and showing stuff, because that's one of the things that I will say right now is a lot of the devs who have been talking about this, the way that they describe CitizenCon is that this is a demonstration of the new perspective on the development of the persistent universe. And that new perspective is heavily focused on gameplay first, that they want to build the gameplay out and they want that gameplay to be the main focus for each patch rather than tools or, scope or anything like that. That's what they wanted to focus on. So if that's the case, I think the only tools panel we're going to get is that first one, and it's still going to kind of generate towards how are we going to get the gameplay in. And I think the same with this one. This one's definitely going to be a social
have been
aspect,
mentioning
that sort of that. How does
social like social services backend and stuff in the monthly reports, but like they're vague mentions and they don't talk about the capabilities at all. They just say that they're working on it. So that's why this is like I hope Major Star stuff is right, because like I want what he wants, and I think we really, really need it. But like they haven't been. It's not like with some of the other things where they talk about it explicitly. So,
all right.
What I'd also be interested in on top of like kind of related to that, but what has been on my mind for a long time now is the future of in-game chat, global chat, party chat. So will in the future of a game that's supposed to be a simulation where we simulate every little thing and have to drink and eat, will there still be a global chat in 5 years' time? That's a question that I have. So will we rely for player-to-player interaction? Will there still be the possibility to have an out of universe God mode chat, if you will? I'm okay with there being a global chat in the menus, but in my opinion, as soon as I enter the world, any communication should be limited to what's within my vicinity, what I can scan, what I can the ships I can call. If things like exploration, scanning, scouting, and stuff like that are supposed to make any sense at all at some point, because otherwise, why would I look for communication frequencies and call ships via ship systems if I can just type in global, hey, send me 2 million and you can be on your way?
You are. You're vibing. I am vibing with what you were putting down right now. That is exactly what I hate global chat. I think global chat is two things. One, it's a liability because, when you put stuff in global chat, like when people can put stuff in global chat and you have no way of censoring them or protecting them because there's, you just get hate speech throughout that. And before anyone gets into this, because whenever you bring this sort of thing up, people get really mad about, various things about freedom of speech and that kind of stuff. That's fine. I'm talking about legal aspects, because there are countries where you say certain words, it can get, and you don't censor it, it can get you fined or attacked because you're not, dealing with it. And I think that without proper tools, which CIG doesn't have, and they don't seem to be interested in building. They need to kind of build a tool, a communication system that works probably more within the fidelity, within the immersion of the universe. It needs to be like part of the universe. And like Eve, for instance, famously has system chat, where like you jump into a system and you see who's talking in that local system to be able to know if anyone's in that system at all. And I think
we don't have faster than light comms in
No.
Star Citizen. Like that's not a thing that we have.
Yeah.
So not only can system to system, but like you were talking about major star stuff, like within your planetary area or something, being limited and not not having everything instantly available.
Yeah, that sort of thing works. It also becomes a gameplay factor when you have communications through chat, but only through certain things. Will people still use Discord? Sure, they'll use Discord to talk about it, but we're not talking about Discord. We're talking about, when you get snuck up on by a pirate and suddenly your local comms are blowing up because it's like, give me your money. It's like, oh, I didn't know there was a pirate here, sort of thing, So,
especially when like it comes to information, like if you try to pull it out of the game, it doesn't. It gives you it's a disadvantage versus if you share information in game, because whether it's coordinates or scan, like you said, major star stuff, scan data, like you're gonna have to verbally put all that out or type it out or something, and it's not they have to be able to do it in a way where it incentivizes you to use the system they've built, because it's interconnected with other aspects of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can move on from that. This is going to be a little bit longer because I told Tree and Major to like do some research, and they both brought notes, which I wasn't expecting them to bring notes. So we're going to be going in detail. If you're looking for someone to break down exactly what everything was saying in detail, this is going to be the video to watch.
Teacher told me to do my homework. It's been a long time since I've listened to the teacher. So.
The next one is the 25954 cosplay competition by Toby. I'm looking forward to this. Every year it gets better. I don't think we have much of a discussion on that one, other than y'all should watch it, because I'm sure Diablos, I don't know if Diablos is going to CitizenCon this year, but Diablos is always one of the top competitors because he goes insane with his complex stuff. So, yeah. And then the next one after that is kind of connected to that is Dressed to Kill. From high fashion to dynamic function, discover starwear. And God damn it. Every time I read it, I just get mad because it's like CIG just like they heard the developers heard that Jared hated the term putting star in front of everything, and they just said bet. Like I'm surprised that they didn't call the system Star Genesis instead of just Genesis, but that may have been the new thing. But from high fashion,
Star Couture.
Yeah. From high fashion to dynamic functions, discover starwear and exciting new character-focused specializations that let you define your identity and take on the challenges ahead, including the return of a legendary friend from CitizenCon's past. I have someone said that, like, someone guessed that might be the space worm, the sandworm, but I'm like, I don't know how that would fit because I think the Genesis is going to be the thing.
I don't know how that would fit either. And, earmuffs if you don't want leaks, but 54321, the Valakar was in the leaked files for 3.24.2. So I feel like they're going to show it off in some way, shape, or form. I just don't know like how that would fit into this panel.
Yeah. If you want to know more about the Valakar, I did a short on the Valakar on the Astro Historian. So it's actually got a full deep lore. It's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Tree. Go ahead, Major.
Maybe I can probably do a short one on this. Maybe it's the language barrier here, but to me this is a little bit of a conundrum. Really, I feel like the description is, I don't want to say all over the place, but fashion, starwear, character focus, specializations, which immediately make me think of, we mentioned EVE Online again. So like when I create a character in EVE Online and I and I decide which the background and the career basically, and then the return. Yeah, that the last part I don't get the reference with the return of a legendary friend. So that's this one's really this is the one that I was like, okay, I don't really get it. But
go ahead, Tree. What do you think?
So I'm going to do the keywords thing again. High fashion, dynamic function, character focused specializations, and then of course the return of the legendary friend. So high fashion, I'm going to specifically go to watch wherever Buster is going to be watching from. Yeah, I don't know if she's. I forget what her plans are, but if she's like stream watching it or whoever's chat she's going to be in, I want to be there so I can see Buster. Buster and is it Buster and Expat Brat, and who else is our hype machines for the fashion?
Oh gosh, what? Why am I blanking on it? Not Red One. It's this.
Lady Space Patrol, right?
Lady Space Patrol is on there. Then there's who always comes on with Buster to talk about fashion is Red J.
Yeah,
and Red J.
Yeah, there's a handful of people who frequent the captain's table, who are very much about the fashion.
Sorry, yes. I was looking for this whenever I think of Buster, I feel like grabbing this.
And shout out to Buster. I forgot to tweet about it, but she sent me a massive raid the other day, and I really appreciate it. I love Buster. But yeah, I'm obviously I'm a space dad, so I'm not a fashionista, but I'm here for their reactions and here to see what they can do, because I think that the creativity, especially with Buster making custom characters. I use a Buster custom in game. That's what I'm calling him now, a Buster custom.
I have a Buster custom.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Limited edition. Yeah.
You all should go support Buster, because she is the face maker. She does she does streams where she makes people from the community, famous people. She's probably one of the best at it. Yeah. She'll even say like, I'm not like super good at it. I just have played enough with it that I have a good idea of how it works. I don't think there's really anybody else other than her who has like publicly talked about like the systems and stuff like that. She's really good at the character.
Not that I've seen, but yeah, it's like, whereas I try to drag something on the face and it makes me instantly look like some sort of creature from the deep, and she's like an artist with it. But like the high fashion part, I think that we're going to be able to have more options to like accessorize. And I know some people won't give a shit, but I know a lot of people will, and I like people being able to have the options, being able to express themselves. So I'm here for it.
It's all about presentation, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You could be the baddest
and presence. Like
you could be the baddest pilot around, but if you don't have the right presentation, no one will know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just like a major part of the MMO experience, and this is an MMO, folks. I think that's going to be fun to watch. Dynamic function. So this is the part that's really cool to me, and the part that I think a lot of people have forgotten about. They showed us basically, it's got pockets last year.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the beginning of the item port system for suits and armors and characters. Because your character, they talked about this, it's been a while, but the plan has always been for your suit and armor to have resource network, resource management like ships, and to have be able to swap out components to, essentially it's just like any other MMO where you're putting on different runes and crystals or whatever to give you this buff, give you that buff. Give you this functionality or something. That's essentially what they're going to be doing with suits and armor, and how they will be able. You'll be able to fine tune what you do within your suit or armor's archetype, and that's the part where they talk about the character focused specializations. Like they've been talking about the specialist armors,
the utility armor, the medical armor.
Yeah, utility armor. Yep, and all those things will have like a base. This is what it has this many of this type of port and this many of this type of port, where you can that's how it differentiates it. And then you'll be able to, okay, how do I spec that out how I want it to do what I want to do, as well as look the way I want it to look. So things like your scanner and your jammer, for scanning for people and jamming their scanners. EVA thrusters for suits, and more fuel, less fuel, speed. Life support having more or less or different types. I want a auto first aid thing. I want something that says, okay, I went down, and it automatically injects me with a med pen type thing to pop me back up.
I was going to say just quick intro. This reminds me of the armor customization from Fallout 4, where like you can get your power armor to do different things like auto inject or have more storage space or be resistant to certain amounts of things. Like the different upgrades you can get for those armor suits. So
yeah, it's just it's a super common game thing, and they're going to Star Citizen it, and but the amount of opportunity for specialization, within the type of gameplay that we, types of gameplay we have.
I just realized who the legendary friend from CitizenCon Past might be. Oh, she was IAE. I was gonna say Molly from last year. Remember Molly, the influencer who was caught in the middle of Siege of Orison?
Oh yes,
man!
How could one forget?
Now I want mission complete.
Yeah,
burrito.
What's his name? Chat will remember.
I'm sure
remember his name.
Yeah. I have those clips in my
Garmin Humble. Yeah, Garmin Humble.
In my OBS, I play those. Whenever I complete a job in my 0 to Hero, I play mission complete. Burrito I eat. The legendary friend. So I was originally thinking Recco Battaglia, even though she wasn't really like presented in CitizenCon. She was shown off when in a character panel they did at a CitizenCon. I think it was 2018. But she's in Squadron 42. She's from Nyx. We're gonna get Nyx shown off. We're gonna get Squadron 42 shown off. Yeah, everybody's been wanting Nyx to come back and Recco with it. So that was a thought. But then I got to give credit to Darge, because Darge said, "What about the mountain from the OMC? Yeah, we're OMC. We belong to what's his name? But played by Craig Fairbrass, because this is Dressed to Kill, and it's about characters. What if they have figured out, okay, we can make people with different heights and different builds? Because they were saying for a while that we're not really going to do that because that makes all of what we were just talking about difficult. But what if maybe they could? I mean, that's just me spitballing based, because got to give credit to Darge, because Darge is like, what about that guy? Maybe it's like, that's a good idea, because he's from CitizenCon Past.
That's too hope. Like that's my secret hope, and I don't want to.
That's me.
About that. Yeah, that is. I do not want them to like. I really hope, but I don't think it's going to be the case of it being like the full customization of characters. Height, weight, the full thing. I don't know if that's going to happen, but
that's the hard part. Is they've got the CitizenCon's Past, and it's within the Dressed to Kill panel. Like because I was also thinking Twitch, but she didn't come out at CitizenCon, but she has cybernetics. Yeah, and I was thinking that's character customization, and specialization. But I'm like, she didn't come out. Is she a CitizenCon thing? So because that was the other thing that what if they start showing that off?
I'm with you though. I think the Dress to Kill is armor mods. It's fashion. They're going to talk about the different fashion. They'll probably talk about different organization fashion, because they've been talking about.
We're going to have purses that you can hit people over the head with. And...
I don't know you. That's my purse. Tom, it's Bobby Hill, baby.
Yep.
I think it'll be probably them showing off what they can do, and I'm sure the Starware is probably the way that they're going to, this tool they're using to create clothing faster, because there has been more accessories and more clothing, which is unique to for every like subscriber drop. It's been a little bit better and more unique. It's not just like a recolorization of something that already exists. And they've been talking a lot about the utility armor. Like that's been something that's coming up in monthly reports frequently.
Mhm.
They talk about it all
Specialist
the
utility
time.
armors.
Specialists in
I
utility
finally get to
armors.
be a space medic.
I also think this probably is going to be where we see the Zeus suit for the first time in Engine. The Titan suit, the Titan combat Titan armor, dressed to kill.
Oh.
And also see some of those other variations, like the cutter, the famous cutter, which is the EVA.
That's on the nose.
Yeah.
Dressed to kill. But
CIG is not subtle. CIG is not subtle. They love their puns.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but that went right over my head.
Yeah.
At first, I was like, "Oh, I didn't pick that up at all."
Yeah. That sort of thing.
Oh, dressed to kill. Being able to, you've got your holsters on your clothes instead of not just, because there are very few clothing items that we can wear with a gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really play the Han Solo with the blaster on your hip.
Yeah.
Because you can't do that. Well, now we can.
And thinking of like thinking of like all of this stuff, I think what we're really going to see is Star Wars probably their final sort of taking all of the disparate efforts of like your clothing and your armor being different and all that stuff, all of that sort of different things, and just putting it into one system, because that's what CIG's been doing. Their Sauron systems, binding them into one system and then using that system to build a bunch of other stuff. I want to believe, I have to believe that's what it is, but I think at the very least we're going to see the utility armors, new clothing styles and styles of things for the different organization fashions, or they've talked about things like the Terra fashion versus the org uniforms and such. So yeah, maybe things like loadouts and lockers, as chat's been saying.
Yeah, right. And especially like if we're go back to the character part, with if we're talking about reputation and NPCs, being able to, I've gotten reputation with this organization, I can buy this fashion stuff now.
Yeah.
Or I get it awarded to me and I can, show who I am, and you see that and you recognize that this person has that high rep because they've got the top hat from, Person Dynamics.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next, because we've been going for an hour now. It doesn't feel like that. Let's move on for an hour. Next one is Beyond Pyro. The fantastic reaches beyond Stanton and Pyro. Join us as we explore the exciting new frontiers of Star Citizen's persistent universe. I'll start with this one because I'm just going to say it's all of the systems they've been working on. I don't think they have the systems done, but I do think they have prototypes using the Genesis system of Nyx, Castra, Magnus, Terra, Lear, maybe even Ellis. Like the systems that they've already had some parts in. Like Castra has so many concept arts for it, so it's clear that it's something that they've been really wanting to do. Nyx was in the game with Levski. You probably seen the new Levski stuff. Magnus is a fan favorite because it's where Drake lives, so it's perfect. And then like Ellis is where the Murray Cup is done, so they already have that done. Lear has been shown off multiple times, and one of the Arena Commander maps is in Lear, so there's a lot of like maybe even Nexus, because like Nexus has got a bunch of maps on it as well. So I think it's just a matter of them showing off this tool and where they're going to go, and probably even starting to shape up like what they're working on next in terms of these different systems and what gameplay is going to be added to them. Major, what do you think?
I'm really, really excited about this one. Probably my favorite panel. I'm a known just flyer of spaceships for the single point of just taking screenshots and landing on moons and just looking at the pretty verse. And I was super hyped last year when we got to play Pyro for the first time for the playtest. And I remember afterwards how we were all hyped about the little we got to see, and we weren't able to access all the moons, all the planets in Pyro, right? But what we saw, I felt like that that inspired me definitely, but also other people really to think of future gameplay ideas beyond Stanton. And I feel like them showing off, like you said, the systems they've been working on, teasing a lot of that stuff, that's ahead of us, is probably going to get me at least really hyped about this feeling. Okay, it's Stanton, Pyro. Now we're moving towards further systems, and kind of what planet solar systems is kind of the foundation for adding more lore that exists already into the game, right?
Yeah,
because basically that's in the systems, that's where the lore takes place. So
yeah, the lore and the stories behind them and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Street, what do you think?
I have similar thoughts, but I'm gonna throw some cold water on this.
Okay.
Because I think I'm gonna be the more conservative one on this one, just because. So to the fantastic reaches beyond Stanton and Pyro, join us as we explore the exciting new frontiers of Star Citizen's persistent universe. So we've long talked about the 5 to 10 systems at launch, and I think this is where they're going to finally rip the Band-Aid off and tell us what those are. These are the systems we're working on to have for 1.0, and then at the 1.0 panel they'll talk about features and what that will look like in terms of gameplay and how we interact with the game. But this is more like a systems portion of it. So I think they will use they'll have some small demonstrations of a few specific locations for those systems to demonstrate them alongside talking about what those systems are with panels and lore. And so I think when people are like, oh, they've been working on Nyx, they're getting ready to release Nyx, I'm like, well, they've done some. And they've done some work here. And so they'll highlight some of that work and what they might have been doing a little bit behind the scenes and what in order to show what the Star Engine stuff is capable of. But I think we're also going to get slides where Dave Haddock and Will Weisbaum come on to talk about what the theme is for this system and what's in it, that Star Engine is going to create and who these characters are, and sort of a holistic demonstration. But it's going to talk to us about those systems. We're not going to be able to say, they're not going to do a fly through of the entire Nyx system, or Castor or something like that. And I that's where I'm trying to curb people's enthusiasm to say they don't have 5, 6, 7 systems, hidden in the files ready to go. They're going to demonstrate and tell us what those systems are and what they're like. They're going to, essentially verbalize we got the Pyro retcon. They're going to essentially say what Nyx is, when it comes out, and what Castro's. Yeah, exactly. Yep. They'll define it with a short teaser and then some pictures and more concept art, which I'm like lore equals gameplay. I hype about that stuff. And if they're going to do that within the framework of showing us how they're going to be able to do it fast, then cool.
I will be happy if they showed us a like an in-game like rendition of Sherman. Like I would lose my mind if they showed us Sherman.
If they started working on that and they've got a little character walking down the street and looking up the giant macro cannon,
it's to the sea of clouds that are underneath it. Like, that would be fantastic.
Someone call 911. Tree fainted and hit his head. But I know there are people who are going to shit on it and who are going to be like, oh, slides and concept art, and we'll see that in 10 years. And it's like, well, did you not see the first panel?
Yeah.
Because that's why the context is important, but people miss context.
And when I said at the beginning, I don't expect them to see all of those systems. I expect to see this is Cascom, this is Sherman, this is Nyx, and there are probably a couple of different things around Nyx, some stations around Nyx. Like this is LS4, this is Berea. Like they'll show the
non-spoilery
planets.
bits of Odin.
Yeah, non-spoilery bits of Odin. Like it'll be just some glory shots and maybe some like space to planet stuff, but no details, no specific like landing zone details, just sort of general ideas of what the system can do. Just some more like flesh out where they're going with the systems, like what do people expect. So
I'll be happy
Citizen
with
Ninja. I'm Citizen Ninja.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop you right there. Nix is not ready.
yeah,
It's not done. Not even close.
go ahead, Major.
I'll be happy with just preview concept art and things along the line of that. But I think this is the point where they need to create or complete the foundation then in order to move on to the next one. You know, when the one we're going to come to next. This is, and maybe even stuff that's been shown in the past already, like years ago before I was around. That's common knowledge among the longtime backers, but that as more and more people from a wider gaming community came in this year, are still coming in. I think a little bit of a refresher on, okay, this is, you know, a lot of the systems that you mentioned, Paul, may be unfamiliar to a lot of people, unless you are the kind of nerd that goes to the website and actually checks out the of course, unless you which is what everybody should do.
Unless you should be watching the Astro Historian, yeah. But yeah.
Exactly, I know, right? So, but so for those who are not that deep into things, I think like a refresher on, okay, this is what to expect in terms of coming systems and giving us a little bit of an impression. That's what I kind of expect. Because otherwise, yeah. No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt, but they said new frontiers.
Yeah.
And I think that the frontiers aspect of it is pretty important in terms of like frontier systems, you know, Nyx, Odin, you know, it's not just, you know, the next systems, but I think that's sort of going to be the theme of a couple of systems, you know, going forward. And
yeah. Oh yeah, Bremen. I didn't think about that. Bremen's probably up there too. Because like Bremen's great because it's big. Yeah, I could go on for. I'll probably have to make an Astro Historian video talking about the different systems and the backgrounds of the first 5, so that people can understand the context. But I do think.
Why haven't you yet, Paul?
I did.
What are you waiting on?
I did. Okay. I did. But like now that they confirmed it, I can go back and double dip because double dipping, baby.
I mean it.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to move on. That's why.
I know. It's just I think this even bringing up stuff that's already known among backers that have been around with the game for a while. Also communicates something. It says, okay, this is information from 7 years ago, but this is still a thing, and you know, just bringing it back to the table and confirming. Well, this is what. Yeah, it was our plan. It is still our plan. It's not one of those ideas that we had.
Orbital defense cannons at Sherman are still a plan. They are still the goal.
Yeah.
They're the gold standard for planetary defense. You can't take that from me.
Ridiculously tall Meser era fuck around and find out sticks. All right. So, but because I think as you're right, I think a lot of this stuff is going to flow from one to another because like Brave New World is going to flow into the social universe, which is going to flow into the competition, which just flows into the Dress to Kill, which will probably flow into like the environments that these different things will be need to, which will go into Pyro and of course, or into Beyond Pyro. And then of course we'll see them talk about Odin, which I think will then transition to the Redacted. Is there anybody on the panel who thinks that Redacted isn't Squadron 42?
Yes. 6 platoon.
Keep coping, Tree.
Yeah.
God, I'd love that. For those who don't know, the
soon TM.
The Tree's big theory is that one of the games after Squadron 42 releases, it's going to be single player, is going to be based on the in-lore Marine unit called 6 Platoon, which is kind of like SEAL Team 6. And so they're like super, so like some kind of like, you know, espionage, Call of Duty-esque, you know, ODST game, you know, Helldivers, but with Star Citizen. So
Literally Helldivers, because
Yeah.
they do that. They
They do drop
get
in
shot out
pods.
of ships and pods and land on planets and do special operations. 6th Platoon has more lore than Squadron 42 itself.
Yeah, it does.
So I don't think, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think they would be so hyper focused on one specific unit, in the UE Marines, on top of the fact that the UE Marines have an ungodly amount of lore, almost as much as the UE Navy. It's like, I don't think it's just for flavor. That's a whole lot of flavor.
Yeah, there's story there. They definitely want to tell a story in the universe somewhere about that. So it's Squadron 42. Now I'll ask you the basics.
2.5 hours of Squadron 42.
Yeah, it's 2.5 hours.
Doesn't the event closes at I think it's
9 p.m.
their time.
Yeah.
Well, it closes at 9, but then the event ends at 8, so they have like an hour break in between from when the event ends, and then you can. So like that's still 2.5 hours of Squadron 42. Holy shit!
You're forgetting something. I think it's going to be, I don't know, 1 hour maximum, and then they're going to send everybody to the Hornet area to do the play test. That's my guess.
It could be. I do think that they did do the vertical slice one year, and it was an hour long. So I wouldn't be surprised if what we got was a vertical slice, a new vertical slice. My theory has been the Moro Tour again. That whole mission chain with the Moro Tour, though. You arrive, you do the briefing, you do the mission, but so like an updated Moro Tour, because they've talked about that a lot of times in the Squadron 42 monthly report. And Chapter 1 is going to be what they're going to be. That's partially leaks right there because of what CIG employees have leaked to the press about the 7-day work week thing. One of those was them talking about them working on Chapter 1, that Chapter 1 demo. So I'm still believe that that's going to be on the floor, that they're going to do that. So instead of like showing it off, they're going to let players play it and maybe show a little bit of it and then let players play the rest of it. But I also think we're going to get a release date. We're going to get we're going to find out who's distributing the physical copies, because we know there is going to be physical copies that they originally had. They probably will have the different editions of Squadron 42. I think we're going to get the full shebang. What do you think there, Tree?
I don't know if they're going to redo what they've already done, but I do within I think Chapter 1, at least a part of it, but I think they're going to pick 3 different sections to demo.
Mm-hmm.
Because you always, and this is something that Paul always talks about, is the sort of like 3 different modules within Squadron. And so I think they're going to have 3 different portions of that demo that highlight the social aspects, the FPS aspects, and the flight combat aspects of the game that really encompass all the individual pieces of work that they've been putting into each one of those things to really show the scope of the game. I don't know if that's all going to be within Chapter 1 or if they might dance around a little bit.
I think the players stuff is going to be Chapter 1, but I do think they're going to show off different versions, different sections. Like, okay, here's the Moro Tour again. Here's that section that we did on the side mission again. So you can kind of like see side by side, so players can see side by side how it's evolved from where it used to be.
Ooh.
So but like in small chunks, not like the entire hour long.
I hope it's not too small,
but
because I think I remember the Starfield thing where it was just like 15 seconds here, it just jumped around so fast.
Yeah,
I hope they don't make that mistake.
I still think, because you don't need 2.5 hours to announce a release date and show a couple videos.
Yeah, that's why I was like, what are they going to be doing? But I think that's probably good
though.
For
Go ahead,
but with the gameplay demo, like you're talking about, not 2.5 hours of clips and
not clips, but now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, there's additional stuff they want to talk about when they announce a release date, right? They Paul, you mentioned they were going to talk about editions. I'm calling it, they're going to not only announce the release date, but also start the pre-order with CitizenCon.
Oh.
In my mind palace, Chris is going to press a red button, and then Squadron 42 is now on pre-order at, I don't know, $69 US.
Thanks.
So and then they want to talk about editions and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if at the press of a button there will be a new Squadron 42 website that's a whole separate thing. And they prepared already a lot of marketing stuff, a lot of promo material marketing stuff, and then there's a whole new world to explore for everybody then online as well, around and I think that's stuff they want to maybe talk about and present. Plus, kind of a recap of when did this all start, this journey, and how did we get here, and then the whole Chris thanking everybody. So maybe 1 hour is not even that much, and maybe they'll even do like 2 hours of the whole, celebrating.
But that is one thing that I think you're kind of touching on it, that I really hope that they do, and I wish CR did more. Is he's generally kind of vague, and I wish that you could see CR. I wish he would be more public about really highlighting how proud he is of the teams and the people and what they're doing, because it does talk about them working really hard, and they're doing great things and stuff. But like I as someone who I've never been high level leadership, but like been in organizations with high level leaders, and been mid level leader and stuff. Like I want to see CR and the people immediately below him really congratulating the teams and the individuals, and really highlighting specifically their work and what they've achieved. Give them the attaboys that they deserve.
Yeah.
I mean, how long was the panel last year for the for Squadron 42 with
45,
I held the line 45 minutes. See,
yeah, because it was 20 minutes, and then they just talked about it for about 15 minutes after that. So
I'd expect them, for the actual announcement of a release date, I'd expect them to at least invest that much time plus something, and then I mean, they did it last year with Chris in the video ahead of the trailer. He was expressing his thanks and yada yada yada, and then getting emotional on stage. I'd expect that plus X.
Yeah. Now, do you think that Major? Do you think they're going to give a specific date, or do you think it's going to be more of a window?
Yes, and it's going to be a specific date, and I'm also calling it. It's going to be the 25th of July, 2025.
Okay, there we go. Hold it.
I just randomly made that up, but if I'm right, I win something.
People need to hire you. That's the answer for your PR team. I think it's going to be a window. I don't think it's going to be a date, because I think CIG is going to go window, and then as they get closer to the date, they'll just start dropping the date. But I do think that the window is going to be. I think the window is going to be fall of 2020. 2025, but I hope it's either the spring of 26 or the spring of 2025, because I am so scared about them releasing around GTA. I am panicked about them releasing around GTA. Like it is, and whenever I bring this up, people say it's not going to be releasing on PC. It's not even the same genre. Why do you care, Paul? And it's like, because it's going to suck the air out of the room. No one's going to pay attention. Not even like movies released around GTA 6's release are going to do well, because people won't talk about anything but GTA 6 on that time. So like the problem, and I know people are saying GTA 6 is delayed. It's not been confirmed yet. So it's so. I think with that being the case, if CIG is vague, it's better for them, because Lyrian did Lyrian they did a big announcement about their release for Baldur's Gate 3, and it turns out it was like the same week or the week after or the week before Starfield, and they were like, let's pull that back to August. So that way, they had to release a little earlier, but because they released earlier, more people played BG3 because of the kind of when they released, there wasn't a lot of stuff out. And so they got a huge boost from viral social marketing about about the whole thing. And that's what I think like a game like Star Citizen or Squadron 42 needs that sort of boost, because, you know, it's going to have people like us who are crazy and who've already purchased it or are really excited for it and going to buy it and play it in first day and probably like it. But then there are people who don't know about the game, who that's the people you need to bring in. So, all right.
But GTA is scheduled kind of for fall
Autumn.
2025. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So,
I don't even know if it's got a specific time. It's just 2025.
It doesn't have a specific date.
Yeah.
It's just been sort of leaked in their internal stuff.
But
that's
are
what
you
they're
then
shooting for.
expecting release window or release date? But are you expecting it to happen before, right? Like I'm expecting Squadron 42 to get released within the next. 8
the
months.
next year easy. I think the problem is that, you know, there's games get towards the end, and as they get towards the end, you find a lot more glaring problems, and so the question becomes, can we just buff it out? Just take a few more minutes and buff out this problem, or just this issue, and then, you know, that can be a couple weeks, that can be a couple of months of just dialing it in properly before you release it. And so most big AAA titles have delayed at least a couple of weeks, if not a month or so, before, or if sometimes a year, for them to get it right. Like Space Marine 2 famously was delayed an entire year because they wanted to really dial it in and make it good, and obviously it needed that year because it's done really well. I think that's the same kind of issue.
I think CIG has already taken that time.
You think?
I think that's already occurred, and I think
the delay was 2016.
Well, no, but like I think, remember when they started the briefing room?
Yeah,
when they did that one. You know, I think that's when they were ramping up because they thought, and then they're like, no, we need a bit more time, and they've gotten it. And I think the only thing that is really holding it back, in my opinion, in terms of uncertainty, is they like, I've been watching for comments from Ben Perry and Sylvan and the other people doing the graphic stuff, and Vulcan, and so we know that they want global animation and ray tracing in Squadron, you know, and where, you know, at what point, where is that in relation to Squadron? Because everything else, you know, I mean, you saw how small the monthly report was last month for Squadron, and what's in it.
It was 4 paragraphs. It was four paragraphs.
They're going to tell us, they're going to tell us that it's content complete. They're playtesting and polishing right now. And I think, like Dell and I have been talking about this, Dell in chat, I think that they're aiming for an Invictus launch week release, you know, and I think that's well within reason given where it sounds like they're at and what they'll probably show us.
Yeah,
especially since they were feature complete last year, they'll have had a whole nother year to get the content complete, and then once your content complete, you're just polishing, and that's May. You know, that's like 9 months.
Yeah,
you know, that's. Yeah, I don't think they're going to. And you've talked about this before, Paul. We're at 6 months to a year of marketing, and that's right in the middle.
Yeah, you want time for activations, because like you need to. CIG is unique because they've already kind of got their demographic. They know who will buy the game, and that's one of the reasons why they've been running all these YouTube ads. You'll see is because they're trying to figure out who clicks on the ads and who's going there, because they know that whoever's going to buy Star Citizen is going to be the similar demographic that's going to buy Squadron. So, and I'm sure they're also trying to figure out who else outside of the Star Citizen demo might be interested in it. That just takes time and planning, but they have that advantage that, unlike other games, like Cyberpunk didn't have an entire player base destroying their game on the months and years leading up to Cyberpunk 2077's release. Like even Baldur's Gate 3 had a like players playing it in pre-release and destroying it, ripping it to pieces, so that Larian had a chance to go back and fix it before it went to its official release. And any of those early access games that release into official release, almost all of them, especially the single player games, have done really well and been performing very well. Like Satisfactory released recently, and I haven't heard any issues with bugs or anything else like that, and it just took off because people were good about a solid, good release. So Star Citizen or Squadron 42 does have that advantage that Star Citizen has been testing a lot of the features and parts for Squadron 42 already. So especially for gameplay. So
yeah, it's not by accident that they were trying to port all that over to the PU so it could get mass testing to see if there's things related to, specific builds and hardware and drivers.
Yeah.
It's not by accident.
All right. That is the first day, and we're an hour and a half in. Luckily, the next ones the next ones are pretty short because there's only 3 panels for the next day. Though this one is probably I would say arguably the most anticipated one. I think there's been the most buzz about crafting and base building.
Definitely the most gameplay related, for sure.
So this one's called Crafting Your Home. It says explore the fundamentals of crafting and base building, including how they combine to enable new opportunities for playtests and ultimately create the future of life amongst the stars. Major, what do you think this is?
So I'm excited about this one. I'm also a little bit worried about this one because we saw a lot of base building related stuff last year. So my guess would be, and I'm doing the keywords thing now also. So fundamentals of crafting, base building, and then I'll leave the others for 3. But specifically base building, I'm hoping to see more in-depth information, maybe further fledged out concepts for base building, but I'm a little bit worried that there will be a lot of stuff that we already saw last year and not really a lot not beyond that. I don't know, it's just a gut feeling, but to me, I know everybody's excited about base building being one of the next things to be implemented, hopefully at some point. But like, to me, just from last year was like something that still felt a little bit far out and far in the future, and I'm curious to see whether they're going to bring it up to speed in terms of like, this is like, you have new we talked about clothes, about flora, fauna, and this is now base building is catching up now, and we're bringing it to the game in the near future. And then crafting, it's something I'm always worried about because I'm okay with crafting to a limited extent, but one of the reasons why I like No Man's Sky more than I play it is that just that I think I mentioned it 2 weeks ago, right? We talked about it a little bit. The micro level of crafting in the style of No Man's Sky is something that's a bit off-putting to me personally, but I know that's a personal preference. So like whenever I read crafting in Star Citizen, I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess it's. But yeah, interesting. Will be interesting to see.
Tree.
I'm gonna do the keywords again. So keyword number 1, fundamentals, and then
basics,
how they combine to enable new opportunities for players, and then life amongst the stars. So fundamentals to me, like, they're gonna demonstrate the basics of this and how it works. You have to, mine however much of this or get it however and put it in this box, and this is the basic UI of how you interact and what you do with that UI in order to craft it to get this output. And then you need this much of this much of that in order to build this building, and it's going to be the very sort of basics of it, kind of like what you'd get in your tutorial for this type of game play in another game, not the we're going to build a mansion in 15 minutes. So it's going to be the basics because it's crafting and base building, and how those things work together in order to do those things. So there's going to be UI stuff. There's going to be, some manipulation, but I think it's going to be, gray box at best in game. And I think people are going to be expecting the feature to be a lot farther along than it is. Cause like, people are like, oh, they'll get the first version in 2024. I'm like, no, you're smoking crack if you think a feature like this is going to get started in April of this year and be released in any way, shape, or form. But it's just the overview of the basics of the process. And then, but how they combine to enable new opportunities for players, to me, this is, and this is me kind of theory crafting, but we talked about this with the org tools and permissions. Being able to, give somebody a contract to say, I need you to deliver 10 SCU of this so that I can make this. And then, players can combine their efforts. They're going to show how they can combine their efforts to do a thing, the sum of, it more than the sum of its parts, essentially, but players. Resource gathering to delivery to then somebody, actually doing the work for you. You pay them for it. But then life amongst the stars, bases are going to require all things will require resources and have resource management. And so they'll talk about how these things function in terms of you having to, continuously fuel it and maintain it in order for it to, and provide, the life support brick in the box to make air conditioning, how that sort of work or how that will work. So that's kind of what I expect from this, because I think it's going to tie into other aspects of what they've been showing at CitizenCon.
How far out, Tree, if I may, Paul, how far out do you think base building is? Because to me, personally, it feels like, as I said, it feels so far away somehow if we're looking at what we're currently, I don't want to say struggling with, like someone in chat said working freight elevators would be nice. So the amount of work that still needs to put into that, and the amount of really fledging out those details and all those intricacies, and so many codependencies in a system-wise. Like I lack the technical vocabulary and the background to be the judge of that. But I feel like this is all still, I don't know. Tell me I'm wrong.
They'll put it out
5 years out.
I don't think it's anywhere that long, but I think like it's going to be iterative, and like we'll get the first dump, with the first vehicle, second half of next year, and we can build these first kind of basic modules with, the ground vehicle version, and then we'll get the Galaxy, and then we'll get the Pioneer. But I think it's going to be something that they roll out over the next, 2 years, starting second half of next year, if that makes sense.
I mean, that would be cool. That's
because like you said, but it's crafting and base building. It's two big features that are they're holistic. Just like radar and scanning for FPS and vehicles is holistic, resource management across all things is holistic. It's holistic systems, but it's gonna take a while to get all this stuff, in, even just from an art perspective, let alone building all the UI and getting the functionality to work with it. But a lot of the functionality in terms of a box of something goes into a space and it disappears and now it's in an inventory. That's what 3.24 was about. That functionality is built into the game. Does it need a lot of work? Oh yeah, but
yeah.
I just wait. I take off my armor or thing, or put a weapon on the ground, and it starts glitching around.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, if we're at that point right now still, that can't be a thing anymore once they introduce base building, right? Because you don't want to, okay, I'm placing this wall here, and then it's everywhere
jitters
suddenly.
And it flies everywhere, yeah.
And the biggest problem with that is a lack of server meshing. Like, that is physics updates. And if your server is running at 5 FPS and it has to continuously update that entity, and it's not updating it in a timely manner, that's how the physics simulation gets all jacked up within the game. That's why we have you put a box or vehicle in your ship and it's going, that's server meshing. And that's the other part of it, is this feature, we're getting static server meshing.
Yeah.
We still have a ways to go until dynamic, and you can't be having expectations of perfect 30 plus FPS on a server all the time with static server meshing. It's going to be an improvement, but it's not going to be locked at 30 FPS the entire time, and you're still going to have some jank things. And so, like you said, though, that we're going to have some limitations until we get there, and that's why I don't see this until for at least probably about another year, and that's until we get the I can build my hut, and place a campfire, essentially,
I personally, I think that what really we're going to see here is crafting. Is the emphasis on the crafting, because it says crafting your home. I mean, obviously it's both, but CIG has also showed off partially what they're going to do, because they showed off on that video that everyone lost their mind about, because they thought that they were going to add base building to 3.24. and but because nobody turned the audio on the the Twitter feed, where they said but here's a little preview of what base building is going to look like in the future and how it connects into things like the elevators and everything else like that. And so yeah, it was neat to see that. So we're probably going to see more of that, but I think we're going to see the basic hut. They're going to show off the basic hut that they've built, that you can build, that is your basic module for living in the verse. And I think the big emphasis is going to be how the crafting system works, how the blueprint system works, because we had the concepts of it last year. I think this year we'll start to see it fleshed out. And I've been saying for a while that I think the first thing we're going to see is craftable armor and craftable weapons, or at least modifiable weapons and armor, using the blueprint system, because that seems to be the direction. I also think this is where we're going to hear about the subscriber gear and the reclaiming your stuff section, because they said they were going to talk about it at CitizenCon, and there's nothing else on this panel that has anything to do with like gear other than maybe the dress to kill.
You can get your subscriber gear back. You just have to make it yourself.
Yes, you get a blueprint. Good luck. But yeah,
I can't sew.
All right. I think the next one it's okay. I'll read it off, but it's pretty self-explanatory. I think a lot of people were confused by this. Captains of Industry. Uncover the ships and ground vehicles that will serve as your primary tools for base building in the verse. Revisit a classic and more. This is the ships panel. That's what this is.
Like that it's kind of partly focused on gameplay that they're also developing alongside with it. So
yeah.
Do you think this is the overall ships panel, though? Because it specifically states the ships and vehicles will serve as your primary tools for base building, right?
And then it says, comma, revisit a classic, comma, and more.
The comma is important.
Yeah. It's the main focus is going to be on the long believed Argo building vehicle, and then maybe even a little push cart that they showed off at CitizenCon last year. And probably an update on the Galaxy. So I think that's going to be the main focuses, is maybe even a reconcept of the Pioneer, because they said they were kind of poking at that at one point. But then they'll talk about...
Isn't that the classic, the Pioneer, or is that...
That's
that
a good
was
question.
The thought that I had too. Yeah.
I think the classic is the Connie. I think they're gonna show off a redo of the Connie, because it is one of the older ships that's out there, and with RSI being next year, or the big RSI push for next year. That's the one I'd hit, because it's like we're already working on big interiors. Let's just take what we already have with the interior and look at the Connie. So
you want to make a
600i
substantial portion of the.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you want to make a substantial portion of the community happy is show that you're going to rework the Connie, and you're going to bring it up to the panel, and that you're going to start doing that.
Yeah.
I think the primary tools for base building, I think that they're going to show us the hover cart and the Atlas chassis tractor combo. And so, like, my running joke is, Anvil and Argo had a baby, and I'm super excited for the happy couple.
Yeah.
My two favorite manufacturers, made a thing together. It's like, oh, I'm so happy for you guys. But I also think they're going to announce that the Galaxy is going into production. Yeah. And that John Crew is going to commit to releasing it next year. Mm-hmm. And people are going to be like, wait a minute, So I think they're shooting for the moon with base building. I hope they get there. I just don't know. I don't know if but I think he's going to say the Galaxy will release next IAE with its with the 3 modules we've sold.
Yeah. Or maybe even sell the crafting module, because that's the one thing that they haven't sold yet.
Yeah, they said but didn't sell. Yeah. I think the revisit the classic, I agree with you, Major Star stuff. I think that the Pioneer and reconcepting that to bring it in line and up to date with what their plans are for base building is definitely within the realm of possibility. But I think either, that would be a home run, but I also think, showing off their plans to make the Connie, really actually game ready would be a big win as well. But then what if they, the other thing I thought about is what if it's, the Zeus was a ship from lore? Yeah. What if they did another ship from lore? What is
it? Stiletto, my beloved.
Stiletto, the Bearcat. There's a bunch of things that you've talked about in different episodes that you've done that, maybe aren't as on brand or name, well known
The lobster,
as
the Drake
Zeus,
lobster. Oh,
but I think that with the home run that the Zeus was,
yeah.
that also could be a recipe for success. But then, so I also, when they say and more, I think we're going to get a version 2 of the silhouette thing that they did last year, and they're going to see that. And then I wouldn't be surprised if they teased a bit of the Idris and the Javelin, because if the Idris is launching with Squadron 42 and that comes out next year, hype train.
Yeah. Major, last for you. What do you think is going to be the ship's going to be shown? We're going to see.
Yeah, so I get it. Commas are important here, but still, the title
name.
there, the headline there is Captains of Industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that kind of frames it, kind of makes it really, for me, is like part crafting your home is. This is the fundamental of crafting and base building, and then Captains of Industry. This is the tools. This is the ships. This is the vehicles. A lot of looking at. We mentioned the Pioneer, the Galaxy, and then maybe revisit a classic. I mean, could be the Taurus as an example for a Galaxy rework, because they've been working on the RSI ships anyway, right? So, but that's the maximum I can see in there. I otherwise, why would they call it Captains of Industry? If it's not specifically.
We could also see things like the Expanse. That's been mentioned. That's not been mentioned, but it's been it's one of those things up there. Because refining is one of those things that CIG hasn't talked a lot about. That's just been hanging out in the background. That's staring at everybody in the distance. Because you have things like building, you have mining, you have salvaging, and all of those things.
You have refueling
and refueling.
I know what the classic is.
Starfare.
Imagine. Picture it.
We've revamped the new FPS map that is the Starfarer for the updated FPS gameplay. It's still going to be an FPS map, but updated with destructible interiors and cover and.
Yeah. I still think it's the Connie. I think that we're going to get a lot of stuff. I think they're going to finally show off a lot of those teases, like the Super Fury that they showed off last year, and then there's the Dorito, which we still don't know what that is. There's been a shocking lack of ships in the last couple of patches. I think we've got the ATLS, we've got the Peregrine, then we've got the Zeus which is coming out. So it's like
the amount of stuff that they say in the monthly reports is getting ready to release.
There's 5 ships which are done, including the Polaris.
Yeah.
On top of the Polaris. So yeah.
And that's the thing. It sounds like there's a good number of that are straight to flyable, which is, unheard of. On top of the things that that are known.
But they're not going to squeeze in those into those 45 minutes, are they? I feel like, now that I look at it again, I feel like the redacted part is going to maybe. What if the redacted part is half Squadron 42, half
ships?
He has 5 new ships straight to flyable.
Possibly. I still think it's going to happen here, though.
Yeah. I also wouldn't, and this is my pure hopium, I would love to see them talk about the super capitals.
Yes.
That, I want John Crew to throw Jail a bone and, spend 5 minutes talking about the cruiser and the escort carrier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hopefully. Because I think everyone wants to hear about the cruiser, and everyone. Do I need to explain how many times the Pegasus gets brought up in my chat? It's like every chat, every single stream for the last 3 years, someone's mentioned the Pegasus at some point. All right, so the last panel. I'll hand this off to you, Major, on this one, and then I'll step away for a few seconds. The stars, my destination. Star Citizen 1.0. PvP,
Such
PvE,
a poetic title.
PvP, PvE, non-combat. What type of game is Star Citizen? If you want answers, join us as we outline the high-level overview of Star Citizen 1.0 and what our intentions are for our epic shared universe. What do you think? Obviously, you know what this is about, but what do you think they're going to kind of outline with 1.0, Major? I'll be right back.
Yeah, bye, Paul. Yeah, welcome everybody to the AstroPub, the Captain's Table. I'm your host, Major Star Stuff. Tree, help me out here. So should we do keywords? PvP, PvE, non-combat. So is this where they're going to talk about PvE, PvP sliders?
Oh gosh, you're shooting for the fences with the. Well, so I was just gonna start with the name. The Stars My Destination is a classic sci-fi book. You know, goes by. But so if you go to if you just Wikipedia it, science fiction novel by American writer Alfred Bester, first publication in 1956, where it was titled Tiger Tiger. But both widely criticized and praised when it first appeared. Boy, that's real subtle there, CIG. You know, you have Star Citizen, Squadron 42, widely criticized and praised when it first appeared, but now is appreciated as a classic work in its own right. Yeah, so tell me, you know, that's so on the nose if you know what to look for.
That's really shooting for the stars, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this is one of those. It just depends on how they do this panel. Because remember when they did the long talk with just a couple of clips? Oh God, I hope they've learned from that. Please, for the love of God, don't do that again. But you know, there's going to be some PowerPoint slides. There's going to be some demo clips, I think. But I am nervous about Rich and CR being on stage, and I hope that this is rehearsed and practiced and scripted and more to the point. Because they're the percentage of the backer community that can get anything out of Chris and CR going on and doing how they do for an hour, 2 hours is very small. And I don't want this to fall on deaf ears or to just be lost on everybody.
Yeah.
You know, show us what 1.0 is. Don't just tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul, welcome back. We changed the rules. I ask you questions now. No, I asked Tree to help me out here because I didn't really know how to start out on this one. But
I'm honest with you. I like be honest. I'll even just say right now, I have no idea what they're going to say. Like it is such a like. I'm glad that you're going to say it. Whatever they're going to say, I'm glad that it's going to be spelled out. But I couldn't tell you what 1.0 is going to look like. So
I feel like this is one, and I'm wondering how. I'm totally with everything that Tree said about this. I hope this is well rehearsed. They really know what they are doing with this, what their intention is with this one, and they have the material to show for whatever it is they want to communicate with this one. Because I feel like this is one where a lot of hopes, dreams, and ideas of a lot of people in the community can potentially be crushed. Because what type of game is Star Citizen? I guess it's arguably one of the elephants in the room, right? Most controversial questions. And a lot of people have a lot of different ideas of what kind of game Star Citizen is. And if this is the panel where they tell us for good, well, it's PV, EVP, and that means and multi-crew and engineering. And if you ever want to fly your big spaceship solo, forget about it. I mean, the shitstorm. Oh, sorry.
You can
demonetized.
Yeah.
The shitstorm. So I'm not sure that like this could be the panel where either afterwards everybody's super hyped about 1.0, or a lot of people will, well, first of all, outrage, and then, well, that was kind of anticlimactic. You know, like I feel like there's a strong redacted section at the end of day one, but then you don't want to really end the second day on a low point and just disappointing people by taking their illusions away. So I'm really I'm ready to grab my popcorn for that one.
Yeah. Tree.
List the features. Don't put any dates on them, but list the features. Talk about what the priorities are. For the but for the and I hope and I know the community team is doing a great job with engagement and sentiment. Despite being understaffed, please hire more people to help Jake. But the amount of confusion and just out of what CR said last year in terms of their goals and intentions, and the amount of how poorly that has, how misconstrued that's been. They can't have that with a important presentation like this, which outlines what their expectations are for 1.0, what their intentions are, what their goals are. It needs to be better articulated than what their goals and everything were for, CitizenCon through the end of 2024. It needs to be a more formalized presentation that says, 1.0 is going to have this in it and this in it and this in it, and the reason, this is why those things are going to be in it. And we've structured the teams, because that's the other big part of that, is they've done this big old restructuring. We've structured the teams in order to be able to achieve these things in a reasonable manner. And that's why we've shown you these things at CitizenCon, to show you that our teams with these tools can get these things done, so that way you guys can have this experience that we are laying out for you. That's it. No dates, no timelines, no promises. Just, this is what it is, and here we've been showing you all weekend, how we're going to, what we're going to use to achieve it. But hope you like it. Because in 2-3 years, this is what it's going to be. If you need to melt your ships and sell your accounts, do it now. But I hope that they're going to be able to have a good amount of clarity. I have concerns given how things have gone with CR and RT on the past, but not just at CitizenCon, but every time you get them on
ISC or SEL,
around the verse, all the things, you put those two together, and oh boy.
Yeah.
If you're one of those people that goes back and watches things 4 or 5 times, and dissects quotes and put things into context, then okay, fine. But it's not going, I have concerns about how well the messaging will be conveyed. People worry about 4.0's launch due to past performance. That this is far more worrisome to me than delivery of 4.0 based off past performance. So
we'll talk about this here in a moment, but this is the one I'm the most worried about as well, because I have said for years that when Star Citizen starts to become more of a game, a thing that people will play, and people will start realizing that their ideas behind the game aren't correct. And I am not immune to that sentiment. Like, I was hoping for more sandbox stuff, and I'm sure they're still kind of will work through it, but CIG has, made many statements saying that we're moving towards a more classic MMO, which typically means more of a theme park, which isn't a bad thing. I'm a big fan of lore and story, and if it means that we're getting more lore and story into the game rather than on the website, then I'm for it. But I'm also, torn, because I don't want it to be at the expense of player freedom and, more that sort of direction. So I know that I myself am not going to get the Star Citizen that I always dreamed of, though my dreams have been pretty shallow usually, but they're pretty basic. But there's going to be elements that I don't like, and I think everyone's going to have that. And I think that's where this is going to come in. I don't think they're going to go into specifics. I don't think CIG is going to sit there and say, it's not a PvP game, go fuck yourself. Like, I don't think they're going to do that. I think what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll try to explain what they want, like how they want the typical players to exist and to react, to function, and then describe like how they're going to get there, and like not this patch does this patch does this, but like we need to get this done, we need to get dynamic meshing done, we need to get this done, and then at the end, 1.0 is going to have these features. And they'll probably put some big ship, like the Endeavor or something like that, that they'll say is the ship that will be released at 1.0. Maybe not all of these, not list ships, but like a ship, because they know that their fans are addicted to ships, like ship stories, ship lore, ship reviews. Ships are a main driving factor, just like mechs are a huge factor in a Mech Warrior game or an Armored Core game. Like, that's the thing that a lot of people tie themselves to. So I think that's probably where they're going to go for it.
If I just
go ahead.
If we get the Endeavor with 1.0, whenever 1.0 will be, I'm going to eat, I don't know, 20 grams of non-infused dried tea leaves. Never.
I don't think it'll be an Endeavor, but as a card-carrying member of the cult of the Endeavor, I will never say that it won't come. Because the Endeavor would also be a smart move, because the Endeavor is basically the entire game. It has elements of the entire game attached to it. So them saying the Endeavor is coming out in 1.0 would signal to players, oh, the game is being done. Like, maybe not all the systems. We're definitely not going to get all the systems. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to stop you right now. You, dear viewer, you're not getting 100 systems at 1.0 launch. That's just not happening. Like
5 to 10.
Yeah.
Reiterated it multiple times.
So yeah.
But do we expect all the systems to be implemented by 1.0?
I think it has to.
Gameplay systems, or I don't. I think they're going to prioritize the ones that they think are most important for the experience, and other things will be considered like tertiary, and these will come after. What is the core gameplay experience? Because honestly, when you think about it, like how much more is there? In terms of core gameplay experience for a life in space game, base building, crafting, mining, salvaging, refining,
agriculture,
combat, but I mean, I feel like the agricultural will probably be part of the base building part. Like they've been showing off those sorts of things. Like, I feel like there's going to be a lot of stuff that they get done that is small, but we're really on the cusp of like a large portion of it being done. But what else is there that they want to get in the next few years to say this is the core of the experience, and then we're going to build on that? Yeah, like Dig Dug just said in chat, medical. Where the fuck is medical tier 1?
Yeah,
we're at medical tier 0 and actor status tier 1. At medical is one of the crowning feature, gameplay mechanics that they have said was going to be a huge part of the game. They've sold numerous ships, for that specific gameplay, and we have first aid.
Yeah,
that's it. Like, if there's anything that I'm going to critique CIG on is where's the and so where's the medical gameplay, and I'm hoping that they talk about that, because that, whether it's lore, whether it's ships, whether it's their talk about how extensive they want the gameplay to be, like that's a big example. Exploration, exploration is a lot of scanning, radar, and data transmission. Well, what have they been working on the most this year? Radar and freaking scanning, folks. Like,
read the monthly reports, y'all. It's disgusting how much they talk about it. Like, typically you'll get like a sentence, maybe 2 on a topic. Like the last 3 monthly reports have had 2 paragraphs on scanning and radar and how they function. So,
but in terms like people talking about the sandbox versus MMO, it's both, folks. These things aren't mutually exclusive. That's why they have this big expansive universe, so that you have room for both. Like if you play traditional MMOs, there isn't room for a lot of sandbox, because the environments aren't huge, and they just fill it with a whole lot of curated content. But when you have planets and moons and giant empty space and asteroid fields, and belts that are as big as they are, there's plenty of room for sandbox gameplay. But there's also plenty of room for curation and MMO surrounding it too. It's not, these things aren't mutually exclusive. They can exist in the same environment, but it's about finding balance.
Yeah.
It's I don't think it's worth the screeching about.
It's been 2 hours for this one, so let's wrap this up with one last
It's
discussion.
only 4 minutes past midnight. What are you talking about?
We got the Q&A, so we're gonna do that then. But I want to finish us off with what do you think is going to be the best panel, and what do you think is going to be the worst panel? Like, what do you think is the people everyone's going to remember? Like, I would say, like last year.
Oh, best for like that everybody.
For everybody.
Poll the community. Okay.
Yeah, the community stuff. So I'll start with you, Tree, on this one, because I think Major's going to need some time to think.
Ooh,
Don't I always?
Gosh. I think people are more going to latch onto the gameplay aspects of crafting your home.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that the Star Engine version, 2.0 panel will probably wow a lot of people, just like last year's did.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in terms of like what people outside the community will see will be the Brave New Worlds.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be the big ticket in terms of holy crap. Look what they're building, look what they're capable of doing. But for those of us that play the game, we're going to be like, "Oh, this looks like fun." For the base building crafting part.
How about bad? What do you think the worst one that people are going to say? Because like in the past, we've had panels that are just boring. They're just meh. But I don't think we've ever had a panel that's just like, pissed people off.
For the majority of people, I think it's going to be the last one. I think the one with the greatest chance of falling flat is the last one.
Mm-hmm. Major, best, and what do you think the best in terms of what people will think is the best, and what do you think is going to be the worst panel for people?
As always, I'll just ignore the rules and start with the worst one because I don't want to end on a negative note. So I agree with Tree. The last one is arguably the one that has, if done right, rehearsed, really well thought through, could be good-ish, but I'm really worried about this one.
Mm-hmm.
And the best one, I think that's a tricky question. I want to go with the crafting your home, but maybe that's just the vibes I've been getting from my bubble, our org. Everybody's excited about base building. Maybe no one is outside my bubble, but I could also see the social universe, if done right, being interesting and being creating a lot of hype, because that's, as I mentioned earlier, that's where the game's still lacking a lot, isn't it? Like Brave New Worlds, a lot of the fashion character-based stuff we've already has already been added or was already added this year. But the whole social aspect stuff, if that could create some hype. But I probably safe bet would be the crafting your home panel.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on how much they can show the implementation of the org and social stuff.
Mm-hmm. Because,
that could definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. If they show any org stuff, I guess that's going to just. Everybody's going to go crazy.
But I want to play solo. I don't want to interact with people.
Good news. There's a solo game for that.
Yeah. So I think the one that everyone is going to dislike, again, echoing with everybody else, is the 1.0, because it has the biggest. There's more landmines there. There's a lot of landmines, and it can't be. Mm-hmm. And if anyone can tell Chris this, if anyone's watching, Chris and what's his name? He's the new leader for the PU. Richard Tyre. Tyre and Chris. Rich and Chris. Get him out and just say, please don't wing it. Please, God, don't wing it. And like, don't riff on the audience. All right, you're not. You'd come in with a plan, say the plan, and leave. Like, don't go too hard on it, because you say the wrong thing, and it's this community. They will find one word. They will find one word you said, and they will turn that into you stabbed their mother in the eye with that one word. Like, they will do it, and it'll be all over the community in 5 seconds. And while generally, who gives a shit about one person or a bunch of people who are being loud, those people will often be the first people that new players are interacting with. is these loud players who will come in and scream the loudest so they can get the most attention on social media, because social media benefits, they benefits themselves. Will negative, visceral, passionate reactions will always get the most attention on social media. And if social media is your main source of like attracting new people, you can't let those people control the narrative. So you have to be very careful about it.
The people by now
there are lots of
control the narrative as far as their own perception of what Star Citizen is supposed to be, right? And I create mine, you create yours.
Yeah.
And within our bubbles of perception of the game. So I love how Tree's been doing these keywords, and for the specific ones, Star's My Destination, I feel like each of them is a potential mine disaster causing thing, like PvP, PvE, non-combat. What type of game is Star Citizen? This is where you get answers. It's like, okay, this is where they potentially tell people, oh, guess what? This is not a game for you, you know? And then like the potential shitstorm that this can. But
yeah, no,
optimism,
I agree.
Captain, optimism.
I do think they can pull it off. I think if they stick to it and they do well, they can pull it off in a degree where they can make.
Well, they have been planning this for a long time.
They talked about this panel in March of this year.
Yeah,
that's how long Chris has been planning this for a while.
Yeah, that's when they first started talking about it. They've been working on this and you know the plan and how they're going to talk about it. So like, it's you know, with how, you know, and I'm gonna come out and say it. There are lots of content creators out there who cover Star Citizen who only know the Cliff Notes version of things that were said or stated, and then they take it and then they put their own spin on it, and people take that as gospel. And they never even heard the original quote or what was actually said, and so the message can easily get absolutely lost. But if you are absolutely, you know, if you stay on target, you know, in terms of describing, you know, what you're going to say, and you articulate it pretty well. Lady Space Patrol, I see you. I always have a whole 4-page thing of citations for my podcast. So when other people start doing that, all right. But
yeah,
I'm just saying, I will always quote, you know, and if I don't have a quote or a citation, I'll say it. But that's the thing, is that things get spun wildly out of control, and that's why they can't just be so off the cuff, because getting the off the cuff is just disastrous.
Yeah.
And you know that message will get diluted, and you know it's going to happen anyway. But if you can mitigate it a little bit by being a bit more clear than they have in the past,
yeah, at least doing that is fine. And I think for the positive thing, I don't think this is going to be as good as last year in general. I think you just can't recapture the magic of 2023. I do think it will be a little bit more physical. Like last year was like, oh, and it's nice to come back in person, and like a lot of these ideas and things are like, oh, this is wow. I don't think we're gonna have any more wows, but I do think like maybe it's just the optimist in me. I think the Squadron 42 release with that whole section will probably be the highlight, because for a lot of people, Star Citizen is still a tech demo. Like Space Tomato will always call Star Citizen a tech demo every single time. Maybe he's just kind of off the cuff and joking about it, but like most people in the community, the general sentiment in the community, at least for people who talk about it, is that this isn't a game. It's an experience or a tech demo or a pre-alpha. Like most people resist calling it an alpha at all. And so when you have something like Squadron 42 being released, that's not an alpha. That's not a tech demo. That's not an experience. It's a game. It's going to come out. It's going to be finished. It's going to be sold as a complete game. And I think that will start make a lot of people realize, oh, wow, Star Citizen is a thing. Like, yeah, it's not Squadron,
and it's
but
going to be
connected.
reflective of a lot of what's in Star Citizen. You know, not everything, but a lot of. You know.
Yeah. So I think that is probably going to be that's going to impact the most, and I think most people will take away, will remember that, and I think that's why I think it'll be a little bit more liked. But With that, I'm going to wrap this up because we have 2 hours and 15 minutes of this thing.
Nice.
And we'll be moving on.
It will be fun, they said.
We'll move on to the question and answer session here. But thank you to Major Star Stuff and Tree0311 for joining us. Check them out on their social medias on YouTube, Twitch. Give them a subscribe if you enjoyed this. Check out their content. The criminally underenjoyed Banu language guide is a good one to get to, especially as we're going into further game evolutions, more systems. It's always nice to know that. And then armchair generals and admirals, or admirals and generals. Which would did I say it right? No.
Oh yeah, armchair admirals and generals.
Admirals and generals.
Hoping to do a return episode for Veterans Day
in November. Yeah, and then also Pathfinder's podcast for Tree.
Yep.
And if you enjoyed this and you're watching this after the fact, after the recording fact, please hit that like button, subscribe for more content, hit the bell icon to be notified when we release and when we go live, which is on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. We'd love to have you come by and join us, and add your own questions to the future questions. And if you're looking for the question and answer session, it will be above Tree's head when it is done. Because I record them at the same time, then I separate them and release them because YouTube's algorithm doesn't like when you drop a bunch of videos together, and it doesn't like really, really long videos, though I think we're going to hurt the algorithm with this 2.5 hour, 2 hour, 15-minute video here. But make sure you check that out. It'll be above there. Click that. If you don't see it there, then it'll be out there shortly. And I'll leave a link to the full VOD in the description below. And like I always say, hope to see you someday in the black. All right, chat. Well, I'm going to give the two guests a chance to go get something to drink and get up and move around, but we'll be right back. So yes, I know Evo is going on. We'll be back shortly though. So don't go anywhere because you can't watch Evo anyways. So take a bio break. Be right back.
Bye.
It was the first part. Yeah, you didn't miss the whole. We'd spent 2.5 hours talking about expectations for CitizenCon. So. Uh, 3 p.m. which time? 3 p.m. Pacific time, Goki? So that would be about 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago? Okay, yeah, 20 minutes ago, okay. And we're back with the question and answer session with Tree0311 Major Star Stuff. If you missed our epic, I should probably do this right. Hold on. If you missed our epic discussion on the CitizenCon schedule and what we expect from it, make sure you check it out. It'll be right above Tree's head. But for this, we're taking questions from the community, specifically about Star Citizen. Some of this stuff might be related to CitizenCon, sometimes that's something else. We'll see. And I'll just say at this point, we've got in the next couple of minutes, 4.0, as of this recording, is going into Evocati's a limited Evocati test for about 2 to 3 hours. So that's a big one. I'm going to start us off just right off the bat. Tree, what does this mean for 4.0? Do you think 4.0 is going to come out this year? Do you think this is just a okay? When do you think it's coming out?
I think CIG is aiming for a before IA release.
Okay.
I think they have a backup plan in place in case it's not quite ready to then release it. You know, if it needs a couple more weeks, then release it shortly thereafter and have a 3.2, 4.3, and then to be able to have 4.0 in open PTU during IAE during the free fly. Because I feel like in terms of, and I don't want to use marketing example because I always say that I'm not a fan of marketing. Even I love the community team, not the marketing folks. But I feel like if you wanted to get great testing of 4.0. In PTU, to have it in open PTU during a free fly, during the biggest free fly event of the year, on a build of the code base that's been as well tested as 3.2, 4.3 will be by then. I think it'd be a really great way to get the amount of testing you want while also being able to show people, hey, this is the game, and here's what it's going to be really soon. You can test it out for yourself, but it's we're going to be releasing it soon. So, but that's the CIG is pulling out all the stops to shorten the testing period and make it as smooth as possible, like they never have before. And if you don't believe me, hop in my Discord. I've got all the sources.
Yeah,
screenshots.
The devs have not been quiet about that. Like they have been
basically not subtle at all.
They've been basically screaming that they want to get this out before IAE. Like John Cruz mentioned about how or was it John or was it Yogi who said we don't plan on being on 3.2 4.2 for very long. Yeah, Yogi's just like it's not going to be here very long. So
the evidence of them doing everything they can to speed this up, shorten it, and make it smooth is overwhelming.
Yeah.
But it's also impressive that CIG is doing all these things, that they thought of all these ways to make it better. So I hats off to them for putting these things into place and changing the way they do things in order to do it. So
I will echo that. I think the big thing to people remember is you have to see how CIG acts and see how CIG works, not what CIG says. What they say is important, but if they say something and they don't act on it, then they don't care. It's just placating, or it's something else, or something went wrong, or something like that. What we've been seeing recently is that CIG has been saying they want to get 4.0 out before the end of the year, and that they still shooting for 4.0 in fourth quarter. And all of their actions have been lining up to that. Things like a ton of tests for server stability, for meshing, the development of the hotfix system they developed, where they can like hotfix a patch quickly without having to completely build a new patch out. The mentions of things like that basically these tests we've been doing are 4.0.1. So like they're already nailing down, like they have an idea of what they want for the size of the of server meshing for 4.0. And like the fact that they built the 3.2 4.2 on 4.0 code base. So Like
3.2, 4.2 is testing the 4.0 code base. The flagship feature for 4.0 has been in experimental mode testing for far longer than CIG intended, of engineering and resource management. So that's been getting tested thoroughly. We've been testing server meshing for 6 weeks now, and it's been going really well, better than I thought it would be. The
every patch has been better.
Yeah, the RMQ has been live since 3.24 released, so that is thoroughly tested. And we've already played with half of Pyro.
Yeah.
And so there's more things, but I could go on. I digress. But that's the thing is, if you're aware of these things, they're like, oh shit, they're serious. If you're not aware of it, it's like, oh, 3.18 all over again. It's like, no, it's not the case at all.
No.
And I'm Paul, I'm going to abuse this because this is your platform, but I'm gonna hijack it for a split second.
Go for it.
See, don't take CIG testing at 1K or 2K players as the goal for 4.0. That's not the goal. Those tests are to break the things and find places that they can optimize it to improve the experience at lower levels, which is what they will release 4.0 at. 500, 600, maybe up to 800. But this is stressing the replication layer to see how much and how it can handle, and how efficiently, how robust and efficient they can make it. But it's also getting data for what comes after on the road to dynamic server meshing. It's not just for 4.0. So have realistic expectations of what the player count for a shard will be, and why 4.0 is far sooner than we think, because they'll probably launch it at 500 or so players. And that's a good decision on their part. They're not going to shoot for 1K players in a shard until we are able to dynamically spin up additional servers, but more importantly, more replication layers, replicants. So that's the big issue, is people have these wildly inaccurate expectations of server meshing because they're measuring it based off of the extreme end of that test, which is not what they're going to launch with. Gosh, there's another thing that I was going to say, and now I forgot what it was, but it was another important point. Anyway, continue. Sorry, it'll come back to me.
Major, when do you think 4.0 is coming out? Do you think it's got a shot this year?
Yeah, I think I agree with the two of you on that. Personally, I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be before or after IAE. Like so many things that you just mentioned kind of point towards that being a possibility, but maybe they end up deciding to play it safe and like open PTU coinciding with the time leading towards IAE, and then a 4.0 release. We're talking about live release, right?
Yeah.
We're not only PTU.
We're
live. Being super optimistic here. Yeah. And then maybe live release, I don't know, before they go on the break, and then we're left with 4.0 working.
Yeah.
Great condition, hopefully.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
I think the ideal release schedule is IAE 4.0 just before IAE, like 2 weeks before IAE. They get a patch out for IAE like within a week or so, just kind of make sure all the stuff works. IE goes, it's a test because they want to test everything at scale, and they'll test it pretty thoroughly, and then they'll figure out the problems with it initially, hot fix it, come out with a patch for IAE, find more broken issues with it, and then come out with a 4.0.1 before the end of the year. And then when it's like stable, they go, it's best we can do it. See you in January, and then leave. Like, like that is ideal scenario. I think it's going to happen. I think it's more likely than 4.0 releasing in like March that a lot of people seem to think is going to happen. Mostly because like
I remember what it was.
A CIG can't test at scale. Like at a certain point, you need the rush of people. You need the whatever 1 million, 2 million, 3 million players all being like, oh, Star Citizen is back again. And then people coming back from 4 years ago suddenly to play Pyro to beat the hell out of the servers so that they know what they're going to expect. Because without that, the PTU won't do that to them. It'll be probably the biggest PTU they've done since 3.0, but it doesn't matter. Like, it just don't matter because it will never, it'll be dwarfed in the scale from what's going to happen before. So,
I think the one other misconception that people have is that, that it's going to be, that the people are expecting 3.18, but 3.18 did things to the game in the back end that 4.0 does not. And that's the disconnect is people don't understand. People think that, oh, it's server meshing, everything's dramatically changing. And no, the relationship between you and how you're, and what you're playing in the game and the server and the replication layer and the entity the entity graph database will not change in 4.0. It doesn't change. That's why they've been building all these things in the stepwise fashion to get to where they are. Because everything prior to server meshing is already established and functional and working. There's still plenty of bugs and performance issues, but the way that the game runs, the way a server simulates the game, the way that you communicate with the server via the replication layer, the way that that your information is stored, none of that changes with server meshing. It's a big change in to allow for for what the scope of the game will be in terms of players and the amount of content they can put in there. But the way the game functions and runs does not change with 4.0. And so that's a big thing because people are like, oh, well, 3.18 was big back-end changes and big, and it's like, well, 3.18 fundamentally changed the way the game interacted with, how everything's built. It just... they ripped out the foundation and put in a new one on a house that was already built, and that's why they talked about before that there's like 12 new services for server meshing as what was planned, and 8 of them came with as part of PES, and they all came at the same time, the Big Bang approach. They talked about it in the 3.18, 3.19 postmortem. That's why it was so broken. That multiplicative factor, exponentially made it, more likely that things would break, but also made it more difficult to find those things that are broken and fix them. And since then, those additional services have been getting built in, and changes have been getting built in leading up to server meshing. And that's why the change to server meshing is so much simpler compared to PES. Are there going to be bugs? Yeah, no different than any other patch, but it doesn't fundamentally change the way that the game actually works. We just have more servers.
All right, let's move on to the questions now. There was a question that was happening earlier. Escape asked a good question from YouTube. Thank you for that $10, by the way, Escape, who asked, what details will you look for in the upcoming scanning update?
What details? Oh, gosh, I feel like they're asking about something specifically.
I mean, generally, I want to know, like, the general idea of how will scanning function and how will you filter? That's the big one, is filtering. Is anyone who has, like... I have a very rudimentary understanding of how radar works and LiDAR works, but I understand that there is a lot of noise in both of those systems. And if you don't have the proper filters, the proper training, the proper equipment, then you sometimes can't tell the difference between a cloud and a bomber because you didn't tweak it right. So having those sorts of filters, I think, are key because right now the biggest problem that happens in sort of your scanning or your HUD is it gets overwhelmed with garbage, and being able to filter out the garbage.
HUD and UI.
Yeah, to be able to filter out the garbage using scanning is important, I think.
Yeah, how much they've been working on that recently, but how many AR markers show up and when they show up and what they look like, so that way you don't have this clutter. Because if you do a big old scanning ping and it shows you everything, you'll just be entirely overwhelmed. And so I think they did talk about that in the monthly report when they're doing their experimental mode, their tests in Arena Commander. And that's the hard part is we didn't see a lot of it at CitizenCon last year because the feature wasn't as fleshed out as some of the other ones. And so I don't know how they're going to visualize that, but I think that's going to be a hard balance to find in terms of giving you the information you want without giving you too much information, and how do you make, how is it making it usable?
Major, what do you think? What are you looking for when they talk about like the scanning system?
Yeah, I guess it's a tricky one. I guess just more information about that whole system, that whole gameplay loop is going to work, right? Because we saw a lot of that last year for CitizenCon with these. Wasn't that the release of the Cutter Scout?
Yeah,
Wasn't the
that was the Cutter Scout.
straight to flyable for CitizenCon? Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean the scanning is kind of an in-between thing in terms of we know it exists and we know a little bit about what it's going to be like, so it's much more tangible than exploration, but much less so than the already established system. So yeah, just hoping to get some more information about the gameplay loop in general. That's really
I'm very simple in what I want. Like with 3.24.2, the caves have their interior maps. And I'm just looking forward to, okay, we have these location-based maps, and hopefully they are, I'm hoping that with this or around this is when they'll have the area map as well. So that way you can see the terrain and some terrain features, that sort of thing. And I'm just looking forward to having that stuff appear on the map when I do a scan and ping. Otherwise, not have it be readily available until I either am within eyeshot or, of it. But also to go in a cave and, okay, I can see this much of the cave, and so that's how much is on my map. But then I do a ping and I get 50 meters down that tunnel, and then 50 meters behind me or something, and now it's on the map. And to be able to have that dynamically show up, like, because I posted a screenshot of the cave interior map, because I'm excited about it. I like going into caves, and it's always been a death trap, and now it's much less of a death trap. But now I want to be able to actually explore it, not, oh, I've got the whole map of this cave. No, I want to scan it as I go along and have the scan reveal minables and oh, what's this over here? Oh, I found the weak signature for the body, or it gives you an area, and I want that kind of gameplay, but I do have concerns about how is CIG going to mitigate the overwhelming amount of data that they could give us and allow us to have the is it I guess customization or filters or being able to decide what information we want, the selling that data is a for me a farther down the line thing. But
at the very least, I think this is the start of exploration gameplay. Like, that's the thing, being able to filter out, am I looking at an asteroid, or am I looking at a ship? Am I looking at a planet? On a planet, am I looking at like an animal habitat, or am I looking at a pile of dung? Like, what am I looking at here?
How much dung?
Yeah,
those ranta.
So yeah.
And I guess kind of persistency versus non-persistence, persistence versus non-persistence of that scanning data, right? Because leading into exploration, then at some point, scanning temporary jump points and stuff like that, which is then going to be outdated information after, I don't know, 50,000 clicks or whatever. Versus you scan a cave and then you have a map of the cave. Maybe that will then be outdated in, I don't know, a year from now when it's overgrown or whatever. But that's could be something interesting to see what they're planning with that.
Having to download the latest maps from at a station. Go to a station, download the latest maps of the system from the ICC Stellar Surveyors, so the updates and changes and other things like that. So
you go to a DC and okay, well, if you don't want to stop by the kiosk and grab the map and put it in your HUD, then all right, you can explore it by hand. But if you spend the time and you spend 5 credits or what, I don't know how they're going to do it, but being able to say, okay, I've got the structural map that shows me where these things are, and then like, because they for the missions, the investigation missions for the DC, like sort of give you an area okay, well, if I know, I've got the label on that area, but I only have that label on that map if I get the map, okay, sweet. I've done the right thing in order to say the last place that he was seen was here, and now I search around here and I don't have the stupid God mode markers.
Yeah.
But at least I know that, okay, here's where the shafts are, here's where the access points are,
Yeah.
And I'm going to start my search here.
You do a ping and you notice there's a body on the other side of this building. You don't know who it is yet, but you're like, okay, well, there's somebody over here, and I know that my target is in this general area. Time to go in, So, but yeah, and a lot of people are asking in chat, like where is this? They mentioned the pings and maps on Markset, or like map markers, and I think it's clear that CIG at one point, because they released the Cutter Scout, and even the ship team went up there and said, We'll talk to you more about it soon, and we haven't heard jack and or shit from them other than the monthly reports, which have been detailed but vague in their detail, if that makes sense. A lot of talk about Delta signatures and stuff like that. So
yeah, and it's a lot of verbiage that it's like I'm not quite sure if I'm understanding this correctly, but they said in May that they wanted to do essentially they stated they wanted to do a experimental mode in Arena Commander
and
for radar and scanning.
Yeah.
Before 4.0, I think, or during 4.0, I can't remember what, and then they reiterated that they were already testing it in Arena Commander in August. Before that. So like when ISC comes back, I will bet money that we're the first ones we're going to see, or within that ISC season, we're going to see radar and scanning get real heavily shown off, and we're gonna be like, oh, that's cool. Can't wait.
Yeah, because that's really soon. That's probably the 4.1. Like that's almost certainly 4.1 territory. So
I'm still thinking that if they get 4.0 out for IAE, then they'll get a 4.1, which is a 4.0.1.
Yeah. So they consider they did
includes
3
radar
patches
and scanning.
4 patches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. We technically did it, and there's another patch with a ship and a feature.
Yeah.
But it's the exact same patch. There's nothing else new in it. Maybe a few locations.
Yeah. Maybe some updates. From the bug fixes and stuff. Yeah. All right. I'm going to skip this one because I think we already answered it. The question is, with rumors of leaks of the redacted section, there's a belief that the Squadron 42, it's a Squadron 42 demo. If so, how much of the Squadron 42 do you think will be playable? I think we've all kind of talked about that a little bit. I think it's going to be just the first chapter, but yeah, do y'all think? I don't think it's going to be like the whole game.
No.
Like a small section at most, like an hour at most. And I don't even think they'll be playing for an hour. I think it'll be less than that. What do you think, Major?
Yeah, I guess so. Like an hour maximum. Like the kind of stuff that us old people used to call a demo of a game. Maybe. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I'd expect. But yeah, Squadron 42 for sure, as we said, unless they kind of no unlesses. Squadron 42 and that's what it is. And,
what do you think, Tree?
See, gosh, I don't know. I feel like compared to what they're going to show off and demonstrate versus what they'll let us play, I just don't. I feel like it would kind of be a letdown if they just let you play what they just showed. Shut up, Darge. But it's it. I'm more excited for what they're going to show versus what I won't be there. But it's they showed off a lot of pyro last year, and we got to play pyro there, and it was what they showed. So it's like I don't know how they go about letting you play Squadron and do anything other than what they show in the demo without you getting too much into things that are spoilery or things that you don't want to see. Like I feel like it's going to be pretty on rails linear compared to how a lot of the campaign has sort of been described about you have some agency and when you take missions, like it's going to be very small linear things. So.
Someone's asking, are we talking about 4.0? No, we're talking about Squadron 42. The question is how much are we going to see with Squadron 42? All right, next question. comes from 89 Dig Dug, who says, will we see a larger scale of the F-7A Hornet made of ice? No.
Made of
No, like the Carrack was last time they did Manchester? No.
Oh gosh, I forgot about that.
That was so many people got mad at that one. So many people, because it was I think it was like part of some of the when it was being showed off, it was people tried to take pictures of it to figure out what it was, and then people were like, why are you wasting so much money on ice statues? It was fun. All right, next question is from Bracer Phoenix, who asks, do you think we could see animals, ground, and flying mounts to ride them instead of using resources? CNG has their own completely owned and partially operated mocap studio. 100% they could mocap riding animals if they wanted to. I don't think it's 1.0 feature, but I don't know, who knows? I don't know how hard it is. Major, what do you think?
If I don't get to ride a tauntaun and then crawl inside it for warmth,
that is true. It is a Chris Roberts
literally
game,
unplayable.
You know.
I mean, we've seen stranger things with the recent fauna updates, I suppose. Yeah. So we have space cows with space eggs. So why not? Do I need that? I mean, where does the immersion start? Where does it end?
Yeah.
Gives me a bit too much. Personally, gives me a bit too much World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Vibes, but
I could.
Oh gosh.
I could see it as a because doesn't No Man's Sky have rideable mounts? I want to say that was the case where you can like tame and ride animals in No Man's Sky. I could be wrong on that one.
I would be surprised if we weren't able to tame wild creatures, in order to then bring them back and then farm them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe if we'll get mounts, because boy, like, how about we get hover
vehicles
bikes working
properly
first?
Yeah.
But I'm just imagining. Oh God, what's his name? Always wears the flannel on here.
The Nixonian Pegasus.
Yes. HC Vertigo.
HC Vertigo's gonna punch a boreal stalker right in the junk, and then sling a harness and a saddle on it, and hi ho silver away.
I mean, if CIG makes it so we can ride and tame any animals, I am riding a pyro crab or whip crab everywhere I go. That is my mount. Everywhere I go, you must accommodate my 2-story tall kaiju. Or 4-story tall kaiju to wherever I go. Yes, people are saying
Mittens doesn't like the way you're talking to me. Mittens doesn't like your tone.
Whatever it's going to be like, it's definitely going to be called Star Pony, as someone in chat says. I love that.
I do. I think it meets the aesthetic, especially for places like Bremen and like the frontier having some sort of rideable mount. But I don't think it's a priority if something like that happens. So I'm glad Paul forgot about the Ranger. I didn't forget about the Ranger. The Ranger a horse doesn't fall over when it stands up.
The hover vehicles have problems. We're not going to get 2-wheel vehicles until they get the hover vehicles.
Yeah.
Not killing you so much. But what are the big woolly mammoth looking things from Tatooine?
Oh yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, the I Have Spoken guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're totally going to have a Star Citizen analog for that.
Yeah. Same with Firefly has horses, and Star Trek had horses.
If a stormtrooper can ride them, then I can too.
Yeah. Bantha is what they're saying.
Bantha.
Bantha. Yep.
And yes, people are coming in being like, it's out. Evo is out. I know. I'm downloading it right now. But no one can show you what it looks like because it's against the NDA. Though I will say there is a fun bug. One of the known issues is that when you get pulled into a jump point, you do not control your velocity. So you are getting shot through the jump point. You are just getting yeeted in, and when you come out, you cannot stop. So if there's something on the other side, you're crashing into it. There is no brakes on this jump point.
The delta change from 3.24.2 to 4.0's patch right now is only 8 gigabytes.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
Okay, next
Next
question.
match.
No Evocati talk. I'm a
Yes.
PTU pleb.
Shampasta asks, with all this talk about needing force in Star Citizen, if and when this happens, the real question is if tree falls in the forest, does anyone hear him? Which tree is the question? It depends.
Treesan?
Treesan or tree 0311? All right. Dell asks, do you think that multiple org associations will survive the 1.0 roadmap? I can't currently think of any MMO that allows for someone to be part of multiple guild orgs, etc. That's a good question. I don't know, unless they're going to de-emphasize the org system. I can't imagine them keeping multiple orgs. Maybe associations will be treated as something differently, but I don't know.
What
do you
if
think?
they just make it be reputation based?
Yeah, but then like you have one person who has like 7 different orgs, and that one person just goes around and be like, I'm going to join this org, and then I'm going to go be a little shit ass. And now that person is connected to that org. Is like org trolling almost, like.
Yeah, but then like what if it, the reputation system makes it so, if like you've got a ranking system within orgs, just like we do for NPC, essentially orgs now, you can't, you can set permissions based off those rankings and stuff, and okay, well, you may be like an affiliate, but you have essentially no permissions whatsoever. And if you do one thing wrong, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
I could see, because otherwise I don't see them making, allowing it unless there's, the CIG doesn't like hard limits.
Yeah. What do you think, Major? Do you think that we're going to see multiple orgs?
I hope so. Otherwise, whom to choose?
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the idea that we'll at some point get faction based mechanics. So like really factions being in control over certain areas, regions, be it via base building or putting up a Nautilus.
Yeah.
And living space mines. But I don't see. I'm not sure. Wouldn't it be? Do we see orgs as org equals faction, or couldn't it be more the way EVE works, where you have, what are those called? Even alliances, and then you have, you can have orgs under the mantle of a larger faction. So maybe, you can't be not like Star Trek Online, Paul, because I know so you can choose either Federation or Klingons, and otherwise you have to create a new character. I could see them going more along the lines with, okay, you can, if your org is part of a certain faction, then and your other orgs as well, then stay in those orgs. But if they are part of factions that are at war with each other or conflicting factions, then maybe you have to make a choice there.
I do hope for, and this is purely hope, but I do hope for it to be largely reputation guided. Because like I do think that in terms of like, everybody talks about, oh, my org, we're going to work together so we can build our own Idris. Well, I would like to see that sort of thing be org reputation based. You as an org have to work together to get your org's reputation up to a point to be able to achieve these great things. It's one thing to have your own personal reputation, but if you as a group, are able to accumulate as good of a reputation for your group to, I think that takes it to a level that other games haven't. And it's one thing, the individual reputation is cool, but you have to be careful who you allow in your org, and make sure they don't torpedo your org's reputation by doing something stupid if you and your group want to achieve something greater than what you could achieve on your own, if that makes sense.
Unless they separate these things completely and make it much simpler, more in line with how games nowadays work, where you have those in mobile games where you where you have your personal reputation and then you can choose to contribute to the org pool of reputation in a to bring it up, and then kind of you can be part of several orgs and decide where you want to contribute. But I don't really see them limiting it, like giving you a hard limit of being only member of one org. Personally, I want to play the game mostly for myself as my character first, and then my org second. And I shouldn't have said that live on stream, but they know that by now.
Yeah.
But also in terms of like role play simulation, but why would one character in game be limited to just being affiliated with one organization? And like, where does that put options for like shadier game players? And I'm pretending to be part of this industrial org, and in reality I'm also part of this piracy org. I think
I'm an instructor for 3 different organizations, and I have a full-time job and a part-time job. Hi, Booney. Hey, buddy.
I'm in the same position where like I think because CIG specifically said that
okay.
They've specifically said that they're using the organization system they're developing for the game. So like the same sort of like the different factions and that kind of stuff. The faction system that they're building is going to be the same system that's the basis for the organization system in in the game, or in for players. So I think.
Sorry, can you guys still hear him?
Yeah, no, we're good. You can hear him. You're good.
Oh, good.
We can't hear him. He's good. Hey, it's Little Tree. Oh.
Oh.
It's Sapling.
Yeah, life is difficult and pain.
Yeah. Very upset Sapling. Sapling 0311.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. We've got a couple more questions. We'll go some rapid fire for them because a lot of these are pretty.
You heard Evo test isn't going well.
89 Dig Dug asks, "Hey Paul, what about that Pegasus?" Shut up, E89. And then I guess a couple of the quick ones. We could knock out a lot of the quick ones.
We're gonna get a Pegasus rideable mount before we get the actual ship in game.
Shimpasa asks, if there is indeed a Squadron 42 demo, do you think that all backers will be able to play it after CitizenCon? I would hope so. Even if it's a limited experience or a limited time, I'd hope so. But what do you think, Major?
That would be great. And I'm here for it. I said the other week, I'm right now, I don't want to say I'm more excited, but I'm kind of, and I'm a multiplayer kind of person, but right now I may even be more excited about Squadron 42 than I am about the MMO. Just right now. So I'd be here for it. I have a gut feeling that tells me maybe they want to play it safe and like keep it to a controlled environment where they set up those, PCs where you can play it.
Where they can debug it and stuff like that,
Yeah. So I don't really see, but I mean, I'm here for it.
Didn't like Baldur's Gate 3 have a demo before it was like it was in, I don't know, it was in early access, but I think it had a demo before.
Baldur's Gate 3 was in early access and beta like for the longest time. I remember playing it like, I don't know, 3 years before it got released.
I could see them doing
forgotten about it.
Doing in that sort of similar fashion where like they leave up, they do the tech preview, but it's the tech preview is just the demo, like kind of like what they did with the Pyro Playground, but so that they can get players to play it and find the bugs on there for like a short like week or so, and then pull it off. So,
I mean, if it's just the,
I think that's my only.
No, good.
If it's just one
that's
level,
my only concern. Yeah, if they do like if they're able to craft what they are at CitizenCon that may be playable for players, and it's limited in scope. As long as they can distribute that to us and to allow other people who it's just like with Pyro Playground last year, they let us play it live at home. I just hope that they don't drop the ball like they did on additional Pyro tests. Like if you're gonna let people play the demo, leave it up there until the game releases. That way, if somebody comes along, they didn't miss their opportunity or something, or oh, you guys said you're going to do another round of playtests and you didn't, we had this last year.
Okay, so Gin and Tonic asks, how did we end up with the two people least able to give a concise answer to any question, as the two that are the most likely to be primaries to be primaries for the 1.0 panel? Talking about how like they do not go short, they go long. The answer is because they're the visionaries. Like as much as you want to say Rich Tire, what I've been hearing from the devs is that the Rich is, they're pulling for Rich. Like they all believe in Rich. They believe in his vision and what he wants to do.
They like working for him.
Yeah,
he's doing a great job.
So like they like him as a good boss.
Talk off rails.
Yeah. So I think they see that him, because he is the ideas guy. Like Chris is obviously the visionary, but like Rich has been the kind of guy who can be like, let's take what we have and let's put it out there. Like let's focus on what the gameplay is. How is this going to play? How are we going to deal with this? How are we going to deal with that? Like it's clear that especially the people who worked with him on the squadron side of things were very passionate about his presence as a leader. So they would trust the person who's leading the effort to display that. I think that's the thing. I could just
the meme where the like daughter or granddaughter is pushing the grandma on her walker, and grandma's talking about okay, grandma, let's go.
Let's get you to bed.
Like, I feel like that's the relationship in terms of like moving things along so we can get the progress we need and get things completed. And like he shares in the vision, understands what you're saying, but all right, let's keep going this way. Yeah.
Let's focus on that. Let's go. I'm part of me is also kind of gonna squeal in delight with those two going up there and talk about 1.0 for like an hour and a half and just talk for an hour and a half. It's going to be awful, but I'd be like, yes, listen to these two passionate people talk about nothing.
I feel like it's going to be well rehearsed.
Yeah, I feel as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think by now they're well aware, and Chris is aware of the risks of getting that one wrong.
Yeah. And the thing is from what I understand about Chris Roberts is that Chris Roberts isn't the kind of guy who walks up there and says, my way or the highway. He walks up there and says, what's the plan? He'll say his ideas, and I think he's firm in his ideas. But from the people I've known who've worked for Chris, they say he is a workshop kind of guy. He goes to a group, tells them what do you think that is good, and then Chris will play it and then give his feedback about whether he likes it or not, but not necessarily like this has got to be that. It's like let's move more this direction rather than this direction kind of idea. So
yeah, what is Jared's face going to look like before that panel starts? And that will let us know how it's going to go.
Yes, Jared may even be watching this right now, so he's probably going to fuck with us and have a very stressed face before that. Because I mean, to be fair, last CitizenCon, Chris Roberts walked up there at the end and he did not spiel and rant. He kept it concise. He kept it to about 15 minutes, and he was off, even with his emotions and like being very overcome with his own, like seeing everything kind of stuff like that. So
just be a little bit more articulate and a little bit more direct. Please.
I'm advertising. We have a title for that: Executive Creative Director, and that's what Chris sounds like at this point. Yeah, that sounds about right. Somebody who is able to talk about the vision, but is not directly controlling the levers of where it goes. Just and here's the idea, and let the director go with where they need to go with that idea. Yeah. Most of last year was 25 minutes of recorded video. Yeah. All right. Any thoughts on what Soul Singer is? I'm going to speak to this for this entire panel when I say none of us know. Nobody knows. There is no evidence that anybody knows. And if they know, they have to, then they're either lying to you or they're CIG themselves. I don't even think many people at CIG know what the fuck that is. It's probably for many of them when it got broken to the community, that was their first time ever hearing about it because it's a trademark. That's it. Trademarks are a legal thing. They deal with lawyers and other things like that. It has nothing to do with that. So, you know,
CIG's not great at naming, but to me the name just feels kind of tacky.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it feels like a name of a AA RPG at best.
It sounds like a name of an independent project that's trying to rip off of Dark Souls, like a Soulsborne clone.
Yep.
I don't think it's going to be the in-universe version of Just Dance.
No.
But yeah, I don't know.
Soul
maybe
Singer is their new karaoke technology.
Yeah. I know. Right? No, but yeah. Part 2 of Squadron 42.
Could be. We don't know. No one knows. And I'd expect it if it was a trademark. I'd expect it to have said Squadron 42 Soul Singer because that's the trademark. Right there's the both of them.
Probably some tech engine related stuff.
We'll know more either at CitizenCon or not, but I don't think so. I think we're going to see. I think that's something that it'll either die out and no one will hear about it again, or we'll hear about it post Squadron. So, all right. Those are some of the easy ones. Oh, here's another one. What ship releases are wouldn't ship releases be more appropriate for an IAE in November rather than CitizenCon in October? Yeah, typically they are. But usually, if I remember correctly, there are 1 to 3 releases at CitizenCon, usually one straight to flyable and then like one concept. And then IAE usually has several straight to flyables or releases and then 1 or 2 concepts. So out of the 4, we're still probably going to see that are done. They're probably going to see some concept work as well. So what do you think there?
There will be one straight to flyable at CitizenCon because there always is. The trend recently is that we're going to get the Zeus. Like people are saying, it's 3.24.2 is already out or almost out, and it's like, well, we're a week away, and they're still working through bugs. They're taking their time with it, and it doesn't need to go live until CitizenCon. It's the CitizenCon patch. So like we're gonna get the Zeus. The Zeus is we'll get a straight to flyable, and we're gonna get a concept. That's basically the recipe for CitizenCon, has been for years. But the fact that they have as many ships or vehicles that they're talking about that are done, I don't think that they're done and we're only going to give you the first 2 and at IAE, and the rest we're going to sprinkle in through first half of next year. So I think that IAE is probably going to be bigger than normal in terms of releases.
Did you start stuff?
Yeah, no, I agree with what Tree said.
Okay. Going through some of the quicker ones here too, because we've got Dr. Platypus asks, with the Galaxy next up, how long do you think they start working on refinery gameplay? I think that's next year too. I think it's later next year, but because it's so tied into everything they're working on, base building, they already have mining, salvage, refining, refueling, all that stuff all connects to refinery. So
all of this stuff is built on the resource management system. That's why it hasn't been developed yet. It's because it's all built on resource management, and crafting. Resource management is the stuff under the hood that makes all these things work, and they just reskin it and change how you work with it in order to make it be engineering gameplay versus crafting gameplay versus refinery gameplay. It's all built on on the same system under the hood, and now that that's going to be in, we'll be testing it, and then they'll further develop, refinery gameplay. That's why we're getting, they're crafting and everything else is in production. But refinery gameplay is crafting. It's just you're doing it with different materials, and probably a different UI process and stuff. So
yeah. Major, what do you think? Do you think we're going to see refinery gameplay next year?
Yeah, I guess next year is a safe bet. Yeah, I'm not deeply enough involved with that
side of things.
I've yet to learn how to properly do mining, so
I don't think
for me is way out there.
I don't think I've ever refined anything in Star Citizen. It's like I don't even know how the system function works, other than it's a timer. That's all I know. So,
I think I did it. I did it once or twice, 2 years back. But
all right, getting through some of these again pretty quickly because there's some bigger ones that I want to definitely talk about. Some people are concerned that their pledges are funding Squadron 42 and beyond. What are your thoughts? By the way, I pledged for more for Squadron 42. Star Citizen was a bonus. They're the same game.
Yeah.
That's the best way of putting it. They're not different. They're the same game. I know some people will say, well, I pledged specifically for, but like no one complains when
that's not how budgeting works.
Yeah. And no one complains when like if people are like looking for specific gameplay and say like a medical comes out, are you going to complain that they worked on medical and not your gameplay? Or, you know, if refining comes out or mining comes out, you're going to complain that they're working on mining and refining and not your gameplay? Like, I get being like, oh, well, this is a completely different product, but that product is going to be sold to an audience which will pay for more development of the game. And the game is a holistic thing. So they're the same thing. Like they're working on the same engine. They have cross support with another. They have assets that bounce back off each other. And it's not just combat or even just like single player story elements. It's AI development, it's engine development, it's graphics development, it's movement, it's HUD, it's all that sort of thing. So
yeah, and I think for people who pledged years back, I can see where they may be coming from. Oh, I pledged for Star Citizen, and but that money has been long used up.
Yeah.
So, and if you right now you join the Star Citizen community and you pledge, you have to be aware of the fact that, well, you're financing a business that's CIG and whatever they do with the money, and it's like, this is money that's strictly going to Star Citizen, and as Tree said, that's not how budgeting works.
Yeah, you're pledging, you are supporting CIG, not one project within CIG, and the cross-mogination between the two is so overwhelming, and especially over the last year that we've seen, like everything you've seen, now they're putting it back over. Well, what do you think is going to happen when, say Squadron releases next year sometime, and CIG, makes, however many millions in sales? Where do you think that money's going to go? Back into CIG, and they'll to develop the further episodes will require infinitely less work. So that money's going to go into the expanding the PU development,
which will
CIG
be
still going, and they're working towards 1.0. Where do you think that money's going to go? Working towards 1.0, PU development, like this whole, it's a dichotomous thing. Is it just it's a false dichotomy. Yeah. There's a logical fallacy for it. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's like, that's not how this works. They just, last year was all about showing us, hey, this is what we were working on for, behind the closed doors of Squadron that is shared between Squadron and the PU, which, and that's what we've been getting and are continuing to get in the not too distant future in terms of features and gameplay. The map, all the maps, radar and scanning, all the interaction stuff, master modes, I shouldn't have said master modes because now people are going to...
No, you said it. You said the word. Right. All of the comments down below are going to be complaining about master modes. I already have to, so I don't care about...
raid.
We already said, talked about CitizenCon. I already know the next video is going to have 4 comments on... The last video is going to have 4 comments on how I don't care about CitizenCon until they fix master modes. God. Side tangent on this one. Go ahead.
Maybe briefly before we move to the next one, because someone in chat said, well, that is how budgeting works. I think...
No.
It's no, it's without getting too much into it, because I'm not qualified to talk about it, but I feel like it's important to keep in mind we are not shareholders of CIG. So just the way we don't own the ships that we pledge, we do not have any shares in the company, and we don't decide the direction of that the company decides to go. And internal budgeting, of course, is a totally different matter. They have their internal budgeting ways of deciding what to do with the pledge money, but the pledge money as a pool is going to CIG and is not going to Star. Just because I pledge another $1,000 ship for Star Citizen, that money doesn't go to Star Citizen. It goes to the money pool that CIG makes, right?
It's also important
that's the point we're trying to make.
The biggest cost of any company is staff. And the staff that work on, I know from my experience, people who work on Star Citizen also work on Squadron. And I don't mean like, oh, they work on Star Citizen and then it goes into Squadron or Squadron. No. They literally just jump between teams in Squadron and Star Citizen. Like, it happens all the time. So the majority of the funds that are going in, and we know CIG's like budgeting reports, goes into the staff, and those staff are working on both all the time, interchangeably in one another all the time. The issue is more priorities and what's going out first and what's coming out next. That's just more of a, it's not like the budgeting.
Things
stuff,
don't get siloed in a company that says, oh, these people made the money, and so therefore it only goes back to them, and this department doesn't get the money. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. Like, for example, I work in healthcare. The Department of Healthcare, within my healthcare organization that I work for, doesn't make money. We are an opportunity cost. Yeah. So my department is, largely funded by other departments because they need me they need my department to function. That's okay. You may work in finance for whatever, organization or industry you work in. But when it comes to the fact that you have one company making doing two projects with so much shared stuff, that's not how that works for them. It isn't siloed like that at all. And it isn't siloed that in healthcare either. That it may be in your specific thing, but that's not how plenty of places work.
I'm struggling.
Isn't the more important point here, and maybe the common ground we could find there, that I feel like the important point here is that we, as the people pledging the money, are not the ones influencing and telling CIG how to budget their things. Just because more people buy Squadron 42, that's not going to impact their internal budgeting.
Yeah,
feel like that's the.
It's more of a. I'm confused. Like, I don't even know how you would silo it, because, like,
how are you going to say, okay, this money is for radar and scanning, but only for the Squadron part?
Yeah.
I totally get Lady Space Patrol if you work in finance, but every business is different, every industry is different, and you can budget towards personnel. Okay, that's the personnel silo. But if you bought in for the PU, that doesn't say that your money only goes towards people working on the PU specifically. Like, CIG doesn't. There's a million different examples where you could say it's not.
Maybe there is something about that, but I don't see it in terms of how CIG is structured. Is the thing. That's the thing. It's like I don't see where they can do that, and that's the problem. Is that they're so intertwined that when I say something like Squadron 42 and Star Citizen are the same game, I mean, like, legally and financially they're the same game. Like, you could not untangle them ever. Like, it would take a monumental task to untangle these two to a degree that would
personally, I think that's why they don't call it Foundry 42 anymore.
Yeah,
it's just CIG.
Yeah, same with like Montreal's just Montreal. It's not Turbulent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Moving on. Yeah. Because there's another good one I don't want to talk about, but should CIG make some gear have an ID check feature? Well, that would basically, okay. Should CIG make some gear have an ID check feature that would make it basically bound to character, especially for the gear bought with real money? Basically, BOP or BOE concept of other MMOs. I don't know what a BOP or B is, but
yeah, I don't think
bound on. Oh,
you're a BOP.
Bound on pickup or bound on enchant.
Yeah, not lootable versus lootable. Is that what they?
Yeah.
Mm, That's sorry. I'm gonna. I feel like this is one of the sticky wickets that CIG have gotten themselves into in terms
Mhm.
of they want the world to feel real, and if I can't loot the thing that person's wearing, because like they specifically talked about that, where if you can see this character and they're wearing that, and then they die, and then they spawn a random thing, you don't get that loot. Like they don't want that, and but I don't know how, it's a how do they do that for balancing so that you don't have people farming it for um specific gear? Is it just a timer? Like I don't feel like there's a simple answer to that. So I hope that they don't make it so you can't loot subscriber items. I feel like that's an arbitrary limitation I would not like. But
I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it. I'm not sure how they're going to solve that. Whether like if a ship gets destroyed, you reclaim the ship.
Yeah.
If it's insured. So why wouldn't it be this? I mean, why wouldn't it be the same for body armor? Any stuff? Is it realistic? Does it kill the immersion if you think about it too much? Kind of. But we'll have that with ships anyway. So like you have a ship insured, and if someone loots your armor, and if you bought it with real money, then that's kind of it's insurance, and you'll just get a new set of armor.
Yeah.
But making it not lootable, how is that in line with a game that's supposed to be immersive?
Yeah, I don't see it like that. It's I can see it as being hot. Like if you shoot me and take my super special armor off, it's super special armor that's registered as stolen. I think they could do things like make it not sellable, but like it's super. You can't like file off the serial number kind of thing. You can't like make it a make it a non-unique item, and they already can kind of track that. So, all right. Next question comes from Amber Trough, who asks, with the Polaris releasing next month and the Idris and Javelin coming out with Squadron 42 soon, do you think we could see
Idris is Squadron 42. Javelin is not. So
okay. Do you think
people?
Do you think we could see the Anvil capital ship concept within the next year?
Oh, next year? No.
No. And you're talking to the evangelist of the Anvil of an Anvil capital ship right here.
Yep. I'm the president of the fan club for the hypothetical thing.
Yes. So, oh, and Tree, you can't say LPD. It says specifically, Tree, you can't say LPD LHD unless you genuinely believe that's what it's going to be.
Oh, I genuinely believe that's what's going to be. I don't see it in the next year.
No.
When Anvil gets their RSI turn, I guess you'd say, then yes, but not in the next year. I don't feel like we still have I feel like there's going to be like some crossover between RSI and whoever's next, overlap.
Mm.
But I definitely, I applaud J. Crew and team. They're doing great, but I think I have more realistic expectations of what they can achieve.
Lady Space Patrol was clarifying, like when they're saying, lady, yeah, that is true, lady, that.
Yeah,
I have to file my taxes, and I definitely have to silo what I spent my money on and where did it go and all that sort of thing. Like I definitely have to categorize those things because the IRS.
Yeah, I feel like there's just a miscommunication.
Yeah,
but
it was a misunderstanding of what we're trying to say, which is what we're trying to say was like how like just
it's not binary how people think it's binary.
Yeah, it's so combobulated, Yeah. Now,
if there's two separate companies, then that would probably be bad.
if it was like, because like some teams like will do like a separate team for development for like a port, and then they'll have like the one team that does this, and then this team does the port. Those are two separate teams working on similar stuff, but they work in two different offices or two different locations. yeah, if they're spending money on both of them somehow, that can be complicated. And but yeah. All right, we've got 5 more questions left, and I've got a 14.
Hang in there, Star Stuff. You're doing great, bud.
Oh,
I know it's like 3:00 in the morning for majors. So.
that's fine.
Deliner asks, what is the ratio of theme park to sandbox you would all be able to tolerate in Star Citizen MMO, or vice versa? I'm gonna cop out on this one.
Across the whole game? Or we talk about the whole game?
Yeah.
Because that's one of, for me, that's one of the, sorry, this is something we've talked about a lot, but this is one of the things that I really like about the sort of 50,000 foot view of Star Citizen and its universe is that each system is so varied in how they're sort of portraying it, and whether it's going to be more sandboxy, more curated MMO, so like, you'll have, I think we're going to have systems where there's going to be very little curation and a whole lot more sandbox, and then vice versa. If you go to Terra, that's going to be curated MMO. There's going to be very little sandbox space in there. And so I think, like, in terms of, if you're looking at the breadth of the game, probably like a 70-30-ish split, in terms of, across the breadth of the game, how much is sandbox space and content and how much is, and I think that would probably cater well to the sort of gamer population, but I don't know.
I'm going to cop out on
That's
this
still
one.
a ton of room.
Yeah. I'm going to cop out in this one and say, I couldn't tell you a hard number. I will tell I will vibe this. It is all about vibes. And the vibes are, does it feel right? Does it feel wrong? Because in some cases, if I'm getting a story with a character who I care about and it's an interesting event, like let's say Siege of Orison, right? I am not expecting Siege of Orison to be a sandbox experience. You go in, you kill people, and you move on. Like, it is a story that you do, a beginning, middle, and end. Same with something like, excuse me, like the Xenothreat Invasion. But when it comes to something like travel, yes, I expect it to be sandbox based. When it comes to something like the basic systems, I expect that to be more sandboxy and more open world, or around open world, but more, you give the player a lot more choice and freedom, that kind of stuff. Like Blockade Runner is probably more sandbox, but more of a sandbox thing than a Siege of Orison is. So I couldn't tell you the distinction. All I could tell you is I like more control given to the player than I like control given to the developers when it comes to these things. Because if developers create good systems that players can use to make gameplay, then you have a good game that will last longer, versus a game that is dedicated to just the developer's content. That becomes a lot harder to engage people and keep them playing for longer. Because once you've reached all the content, it's like, why do I continue? So that's me. It's more about getting the systems in properly. Major, what do you think? Sandbox
and also,
versus...
you don't want to have a hard cut between like curated content and then sandbox content, because then it feels like, okay, I'm through the, this is the end game is the sandbox, and then it's like okay, so I don't know, the way I see it, it's going to be probably what Teresa described. Subscribe. What she described there. Like they want to find that sweet spot and kind of balance things out. I guess it's going to be a new kind of feel to it, right? It's not going to feel like a traditional sandbox game, but also not like a traditional what was the other thing? I'm tired.
It's just more like the difference between sandbox and how much sandbox and how much like theme park, like
yeah, theme park, that analogy, yeah. I guess I think someone in chat that like a theme park, a sandbox made out of a theme park made out of a sandbox. So
I think for me, where I sort of like differentiated is ownership.
Mhm.
You know, if you're in a star system that is not UE controlled, and miners mining gameplay, and if there aren't, if Shubin Interstellar hasn't laid claim to this, area of an asteroid belt or anything, that's entirely sandbox mining. You can maybe you go mine there, to get the materials to fulfill a contract, but it's free, it's open source, you can do with it what you want. If you want to fill a contract, if you want to do it for your own refining and base building, what have you, to me that's where it's sandboxy. But if you're in Stanton, I don't expect there to be much in the way of free form mining.
Yeah.
I don't expect it to be like how it has been for a long time. I expect Stanton to be owned, and for that mining content to be curated, because it's a starter system. But if you go to like a Vanduul controlled system, that's going to be a mix, because there's going to be some very curated missions to attack the Vanduul, or recover this or that or whatever. But there's also just going to be Vanduul running around, and you can engage with them and do what you want, and find a wreck that's lying around that was just procedurally generated. That's sandboxy content. So it's just it's each system is going to have a spectrum, but that spectrum will also be different between different types of gameplay. One system may have a lot more curated combat, but sandbox in terms of industrial type gameplay, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it could be also just a simple matter of chat here says cities and space stations, right? Will have more curated content potentially. So where there's already
location based.
Location based, exactly. I don't see a lot of sandbox gameplay going on in an R-Corp, right? Doesn't make too much sense. But yeah.
All right. We've got 4 more questions. I'm going to save some of the questions specifically about CitizenCon for last. Lady Space Patrol asks a question which we actually answered last time, which was actually a big one. But this is I think they asked the specific question, which is what will happen to Star Citizen if Squadron 42 is a commercial flop? That's the big one, is commercial flop, not a critical flop, not a
critical flop.
Yeah. I don't think anything. If Squadron 42 doesn't sell much, it may change something like how they fund the game. But the thing is that Squadron 42 doesn't have to sell every copy it's going to sell in the first week, like most games do, because most games get a money up front, and like they have to sell they have to sell them because like they're broke. Like, they spent all their money on this game, now they got to make that money back with the sales. CIG doesn't have that problem. They've spent a lot of money, but they still have another game that's funded.
The game's development has already been funded.
Yeah. And
so any money they make is, goes into the pot and helps CIG. So it doesn't, would it be better for CIG? Would it be better for us who want the PU to grow? Absolutely. They want it to make more money, but CIG isn't in any sort of make or break situation regarding how much it sells.
And it could find an audience later. It's happened plenty of times where games release, they don't find an audience, and then a couple months later or a year later they find an audience. So Chief does
I always use Mass Effect as an example. The Mass Effect 1 didn't sell anywhere close to as well as the follow-ons. The franchise got far more popular, and then of course it tanked, but and sold a lot more over time.
Shift Monkey also adds, though, Squadron 42 does have investors, though. Yes. And this is Tree's favorite topic, so I'll let Tree talk about the culters.
CIG has investors. Squadron 42 doesn't have investors, and the money from the investors, per CIG, was specifically earmarked for marketing costs and platform costs, aka hosting servers, essentially to cover the cost of static server meshing until it becomes more economically viable, because static server meshing is going to cost CIG more money than what they're doing right now in terms of platform costs. But then the marketing campaign, they didn't want the money from pledges to go towards marketing and platform costs. So that's why they have that investment in order to cover those sorts of things. But the investors are here to have a return on their investment, and they want CIG to grow and be worth more money. Right when they bought into CIG, it was valued at about $500 million, and that was in 2018, and when their initial round of investment. So think about and that's based off of their earnings and how big CIG was. Well, think about how much CIG is worth now. So that's how much multiply that by their initial investment. That's how much their investment's worth if they were to divest. Then think about how much CIG would be worth based off of Squadron sales and where CIG is, post 4.0 in terms of the growth of the PU and all that. That's where the investors make their money when they do divest. What's their money worth? But also when they do start getting dividends, because they won't start getting dividends until CIG is making profits, which they barely make a profit because they reinvested in the company. Mm-hmm. Those dividends will be based off of how valuable their shares are. So they have a vested interest in Squadron 42 selling well, but their money is based off of CIG's worth, and so it's not a make or break thing.
No, and they've also had multiple chances to off ship. And they've not only have they chose not to, they've doubled down. So
yeah, they bought what was his name? Who just retired?
Oh right.
He was Chris Roberts' partner. He had
Ortwin.
He had an 8% interest in the company.
Ortwin
and they bought up. Yeah, they bought up Ortwin's shares when he retired, at a much higher cost than their initial investment, because they think that money is going to earn money. That investment's going to earn money at this late stage in the game.
Yeah. So. And they're also the Calders have a personal connection to the Robertses, so they know each other.
They are friends.
So this is less of a cold hard business decision and more of a decision that's based off of, obviously they're in business, so they probably did some risk assessments and other things like that to try to figure out would it be worth it, but also because they have a personal relationship with Chris. So that's the thing. It's like a lot of people over begin to like conspiritualize and think about these but these like they have 10% of the company. They're on the board, but they're close friends with Chris, and they do not have the same kind of voting power. You think they're here like Aaron, like Sandy, like everybody else who
it's a board of advisement, not a board of directors.
Yeah,
because CR retains I think he's well more than half. He has a super majority essentially.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things going on as well, because like they're here for the long term. So yeah. Now, I wanted Tree to say that because I know Tree's done a lot more research than I have, and a lot of that stuff.
Well, and they did get a small dividend. I think it wasn't like 2021 or something like that. Yeah. It was. I forget when it was exactly. It was either 2019 or it was before CIG started getting the tax credits from the UK. Mm-hmm. And CIG gets multiple millions of dollars in tax credits from the UK for spending money in the UK and hiring people there, which is why they don't get dividends, because instead of taking a profit, they invest in the company. Mm-hmm. Well, when company is this big and doesn't need to grow anymore, and now they make this much money, then they will get their dividends off of that much money, and the UK won't be giving them a tax credit for paying dividends, and paying bonuses.
I'll ask Major Starstuff this question, because I think this is for you first for this one, because you come from Overwatch and other sides of the community, or of gaming community. So you've sort of seen, and you even said you're more of a multiplayer kind of guy, and you've been kind of interested in Squadron 42. Dell asks, is this CitizenCon going to be the year we finally see the community divide between the Squadron and single player community and the Star Citizen MMO community that's been simmering for what feels like years?
It's a very good question. It's a very interesting question, mm-hmm. That I'm going to spend the remainder of this weekend thinking about, actually. And I'm serious. I think that's a really good question. Thank you for that one. again, within my bubble of Star Citizen reality, I feel like there's a lot of people, or I know a lot of people who tell me I'm only interested in an MMO. I don't care about Squadron 42. A surprisingly high amount, I want to say. So I'm not sure if I'm an exception there, because like for me, it's weirdly enough, I'm usually single player. I hardly ever play single player games. It's really, it's horrible. There's so many beautiful games out there, and I never play them because I need that thrill of really human interaction. And so yeah, I could. It's a bit like the divide between industrial people and piracy people, right? Or the sweaty fighter community. I don't know. Is it we all kind of coexist, don't we? We all think our respective bubble is the largest. The fighter people think they're the majority of players. The pirates think they're the majority. The industrialists think they, and none of those is really true. So I think we can just keep coexisting, and really, I guess it's going to be more like just, if anything, more ignorance towards each other, and just, okay, that they're doing something there, playing that obscure game that I don't know anything about, and vice versa, But I don't really see it as a divide or as a split, because there's, at the end of the day, it's still the same game, right? Is it?
Yeah.
If only framed by existing within the same launcher? Question mark. It's even as a separate game, Squadron 42 is going to exist within the context of Star Citizen. So if you play Squadron 42, you are a Star Citizen player. Sorry, getting pseudo-philosophical here.
No, it's a philosophical question, because this is something I've been thinking for a while, because as a fan of the Fallout series, seeing the split between Fallout fans and Fallout 76 fans has been interesting to watch, because there are people who only play Fallout 76, who never played another Fallout game. They were only interested because Fallout 76 let them play with their friends. And so they got into Fallout through Fallout 76, became part of the community. But then you have the people who are single player Fallout fans who just don't want anything to do with the 76 folks. And they actually kind of get mad that there's actual lore and lore significance in Fallout 76 that they have to play in order to understand that stuff, because they don't want to do that. They just want to pretend it doesn't exist. And as a result, you have that sort of divide between these two communities who just kind of tolerate each other to just straight up do not like each other, sort of thing.
I feel like the parity between the two games, especially because the MMO of Star Citizen, the amount of curation, we're not there yet, not even close. But I think the amount of curated content that is accessible to to one person to playing solo will be enough that the conversion ratio is higher than people might think. But I do think there's going to be those people who, that they're not going to get the experience out of the PU that you get in Squadron, because you're not Squadron, you're not like, superhero, like I'm the greatest pilot ever, I'm invincible, but they're not going to get that experience. But I think that there's going to be plenty enough for someone who plays solo to have curated content that's, any other MMO, the curated content isn't to the level of a dedicated single player game, but enough where it piques the interest of most people, or probably, when I say most, like a simple majority of folks, maybe 2/3.
I do think that there will be a division. I do think that the vast majority of people, though, will like both. I think if you like Star Citizen, and how,
or at least we'll play both.
Yeah, we'll play both.
You might not like it, but you'll try it. And that's the conversion ratio thing that CIG wants. Like, they've had their conversion ratio of people who buy the game after doing the free fly, and they're going to have their own conversion ratio of people who, buy into the PU after only playing Squadron, and vice versa.
I do think that based off of my experience with Star Citizen lore videos, for instance, I do think that there is enough interest in the story elements and the universe of Star Citizen that when Squadron 42 comes out, a lot of people will be like, I'm interested in playing that. And then when Squadron 42 comes out, and people will find out this universe exists, and they'll be like, wait, you can play just a dude, a dudette, a non-gendered a person's in this universe. Interesting. Let me play and let me find out more about what the little nicks and crannies of the universe look like. I think there's enough of that.
I think especially as the universe location catches up to where Squadron 42 is, I think they'll get better as well. Because people who want to fight the Van Duel more can't fight the Van Duel, but once you can fight the Van Duel and you can get more of that experience, I think that there are some people who are going to be very happy with that.
I'm not worried about the conversion from Squadron 42 over to the live service or the MMO. Maybe then the divide will be more with existing longtime Star Citizen players who already are like, oh, this is my game, I want to play, I don't care about the single player. And then it probably depends, because what you just described, Paul, that's exactly me. Like right now, the one huge turn down I have in Star Citizen is the lack of, and I keep repeating this, the lack of lore being like,
story.
I can't feel it. I can't breathe it. It's not, it's there. I have to go. I have to suffer. I can go to the Astro Historian and watch it there, but I want to have it in the game. And Squadron 42 for me feels like that's going to be the first opportunity for us to experience the lore in the flesh.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of pulls me over. If you don't care about that stuff, then I guess you'll just stick with the MMO.
Yeah. I think
stories and substance.
I do think stories and substance are important, though, because the number of people I know who are PvP sweatlords who are like, Paul, I love your lore videos, and like I have gotten more than a handful of people who are super hardcore, like face to the grindstone, sweat dripping off their foreheads, playing Star Citizen, and know all of the nicks and crannies, who will like gleefully line up to listen to an Astro Historian video, and that's made me go, there is something about this sort of story, this sort of connection between the two. So, all right. Let's see. The last two questions. This question's from Tagram Unlimited, who asks, do you think CIG will ever refurbish the older ships like the Reclaimer, or they just make Mark II versions instead of them? Go ahead, Major.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the trend with the Mark II version. At this point, I don't know. I can't really see them releasing Mark II versions for all the ships. I can't really get my head around how they're going to, just discontinue or just retire all the Mark Is. I mean, there's ships that are due for a complete rework anyway. And some ships, like the Freelancer, does it need a complete rework, or does it just? No, I don't know. I'm not really. I'm not sure where I'm getting with this thought, but
I see more 600i rework than I do Mark IIs. I think Mark IIs are fine for a ship that's playable already in game, and it makes sense for historical to have a Mark II, but like the Connie needs an update to be in line with the game's design and features. The Freelancer does. Freelancer, they've been doing a lot of work on. Their Reclaimer needs it so bad. The 600i rework, we know, is something that they did in order to bring it in line with their design philosophy. So Plus, I don't want people having to buy the new ship to get one that works better in game. I think that's that to me that seems like a terrible freaking idea. So I see more reworks where the people that own the ship, they get the updated version, and then everybody else is like, oh sweet, it's better now. Now I'll buy it. But I don't think CIG wants legacy ships that just don't work within the framework of the game. Starfare,
Yeah, I was concerned that CIG might move towards a Mark II system when they had the Hornet Mark II coming out. But I do think that was a unique situation where the Hornet was released and they had the idea of doing the Mark II for Squadron, not for Star Citizen itself. And the reason why I kind of got around was because it fit narratively in the story, or there's some element inside of it like, hey, we don't like how this design looks right now. Let's improve this design here and there. And so they came up with the idea of the Mark II, and as a distinct difference between the Mark I and the Mark II. So like maybe even shows up in Squadron at some point. And because of that, that's the reason why we got it. I don't think we see a Mark II going forward. I think CIG, it's just too much of a pain in the ass to have a Mark II freelancer and the original freelancer. Then you hope support them both. Like that's just a lot of work. I think they just would rather just fix the original thing. So, and I think the Starfarer and the Reclaimer, the reason why we don't see them being pushed for updates is because they're both in Squadron. So they can't really update because of like pathing for NPCs and anything else like that. Because we know in the vertical slice, we've like Starfarer being is a part of the story. It was in the vertical slice I talked about the Starfarer. There's literally a Reclaimer in this vertical slice mission.
Question is, do you actually go on board? Because I think it's really just an interior. Like I don't expect big external structural reworks at all. Like they reworked the interior for the Retaliator. They barely changed the actual structure of the ship. It looks the same.
Maybe, but I also think that the major thing about that is that like we know the Freelancer, for instance, its interior. We saw its interior in multiple trailers. Like there's a Freelancer interior you're going into in Squadron, which is probably one of the reasons why they haven't redone the interior for the Freelancer, because it's part of the game. So, and every time they do a big update for a ship, like when they updated the Cutlass, they sold like crazy. He made a lot of money off the Cutlass, and they continue to do so. So,
I think the more interesting question, this is a bit of German sarcasm. I think the more or maybe an additional interesting question could be, does CIG know how they're going to do this?
That's actually a good question. Because I think the answer is probably, I'm sure the answer is yes. They totally know.
Yes.
100%.
I think they have a high level plan, but they haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't have details on how they're going to rework the Reclaimer, but they do know that, hey, we're going to need to do this, because like John Cruise talked about it. He's aware. Yeah.
Sorry. I may or may not be doing something that I'm not supposed to be doing while I'm streaming.
John Crew will do anything to avoid the endeavor. Good one.
Oh, right. I can't do that way. Whatever. I'll do it later. Oh, gosh. All right. Last question from Gin and Tonic, who asks, for the Legends Past in the fashion panel, you keep talking about in-game characters. CitizenCon is a live event. Wouldn't it make sense for a real person, not a character? For the fashion panel, he's saying that instead of a legendary character from the past, what he's saying is it's like an actual person, like
as
Jay
in
Lee,
Mark Hamill.
Oh man, I hope if Harry comes back to CIG, don't
from the past.
Yeah,
from the past, Star Wars.
Because Jeremiah Lee was on
far,
Yeah.
But Jeremiah Lee was on multiple of those character panels where they talked about like the armors and the clothes and all that. And he and Jared are close friends. Like
they were literally roommates.
Yeah.
Or flatmates or whatever. But
yeah. Let's start a petition, bring back Jeremiah Lee and Paul. Oh gosh.
I used to play games with Jay Lee, so I love Jay Lee, but I don't think it's going to be that. I do think it's going to be some character or something they've talked about.
Paul Jones. Bring back Paul Jones and Jeremiah Lee. Whether they want to or not.
I think Paul Jones may be in a situation he may have to come back to Star Citizen soon, just because Ubisoft is not in a good position right now. Oh, they are in a bad position. No matter what you think about it. Yeah, the oof is big on that one.
And it's going to be bad for the people who work there, and that's what
makes me mad.
Makes me hate it the most.
All right. Did Bone leave? No, Bone's still there. As far as I know. That's the last of the questions. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Thanks for joining us. I may or may not be currently lifting a Corsair off of Area 18 in the Ivacati, but in the background. I will say, based off of my limited time here, it is playing, okay. I will say that there is also it is also instantly spawning ships. It is not bringing the ships up; it is just popping them into the universe. So they know there's something wrong with that. So, for those of you who are watching this after the fact, make sure you check out Tree and Major Star stuff on their social medias and their Twitch and YouTube's
local tea seminars.
And if you enjoyed this, make sure you join us live. Ask your own questions live at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub, youtube.com/TheAstroPubLive, which we do on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Would love to have you come by and join us. And if you let me know in the comments down below what you think about any of these questions. And if you enjoyed this, hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and hit the bell icon to be notified when these release. Like I always say, hope to see you someday in the black.
Bye.
All right, chat. Let's find someone to raid. We'll want to try to raid somebody who is a bit of a smaller streamer, if possible.
All right. I got to go help make dinner.